Welcome to the third edition of the Sherlock Holmes stories. First up is Sherlock Holmes in The Resident Patient.
Tell me, Inspector, have you noticed anything at all peculiar about the state of this room?
I wouldn't say peculiar, Mr. Holmes. We found 4 cigar stubs in the grate. The deceased appears to have been smoking heavily during the night.
Have you got his cigar holder?
No, sir. No sign of one.
His cigar case, then?
Oh, yes, that was on the dressing table. Here it is.
Quite so. This is no suicide, Inspector. It's a deliberately planned and cold-blooded murder.
The Resident Patient by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Dramatised for radio by Peter Ling. With Clive Merrison as Sherlock Holmes and Michael Williams as Dr. John Watson. And featuring Robert Lang as Alfred Blessington, Clarence Smith as Dr. Percy Trevelyan, with David Kossoff and George Winter. The Resident Patient.
It had been a close, rainy day in October. Unhealthy weather. But the evening brought a breeze with it, and Holmes suggested we should refresh ourselves with a ramble to Hyde Park.
And what have you decided, Watson? Will there ever be Home Rule for Ireland?
As long as Lord Salisbury remains Prime Minister, it seems to me... I beg your pardon?
Surely you are musing upon the problem. Out of fancy, you concluded that such a complicated issue is unlikely to be solved through party politics.
Yes, those were my thoughts exactly. I didn't realize I'd put them into words.
You did not. But we know each other pretty well by now. Wouldn't you agree? Sometimes I may be able to follow your unspoken thoughts.
Good Lord. I hope you're not taking up telepathy as a hobby.
Oh, hardly that. A very unscientific science, I fear.
Very well, then. No doubt you're about to explain to me how the trick was done.
My dear fellow, ever since we left Hyde Park, you've been in a brown study, and your features are the faithful servants of your emotions.
Do you mean to tell me that you were able to read my train of thought in my facial expression?
Your eyes are particularly eloquent. Perhaps you can recall how your reverie began.
Yes, well, let's see, I think perhaps, No, I can't.
Then I will tell you. A barrel organ struck up an old Irish tune. It evoked some picturesque... My head was full of the emerald oil. A moment later, a man walked by carrying a travelling bag.
Ah, you noticed him too.
A Gladstone bag, to be precise. Ireland Gladstone. You were reminded of his unsuccessful attempt to carry through the Home Rule Bill. Then we passed 2 dogs barking furiously at each other, and their wretched owners straining to prevent a life-or-death struggle. And at last, far away in Westminster, Big Ben began to strike the hour. Your mind flew to the Houses of Parliament, and a rueful smile quivered upon your lips. Was there, after all, so very much difference in principle between Gladstone and Salisbury hammering it out across the floor of the House and a Common Garden dogfight?
My dear Holmes, you have followed me quite wonderfully. Although, of course, now you have explained it, it's quite obvious, really.
Certainly, Watson. All very superficial, I assure you. But it's 10 o'clock. High time to turn our steps to Baker Street. Oh, well. It seems we have a visitor.
You mean the broom? There's no reason to suppose it's waiting for us.
I think you'll find it is. There is a light in the sitting-room window. Mrs. Hudson would scarcely have lit the lamp in an empty room. A colleague of yours, perhaps.
What makes you say that?
Look inside. This carriage belongs to a doctor in general practice, not long established, but he's had a good deal of work already.
Of course. The wicker basket. Varied selection of medical instruments. Still reasonably new and shining.
Well done, Watson. But what brings the good doctor to visit us at such a late hour?
Mr. Holmes?
Good evening, Doctor. Allow me to introduce you to a fellow medico, my friend Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir? How do you do?
Please, resume your seat. and let me know how I can serve you.
Thank you. But firstly, may I ask you how you knew I was a doctor?
My colleague tipped me off. I'm not alone in possessing deductive powers.
Oh, thank you, Holmes.
Proceed with your story, Doctor.
My name is Percy Trevelyan, and I live at 103 Brook Street.
Trevelyan? Forgive me, you're not P.J. Trevelyan, the author of a monograph upon obscure nervous lesions.
Dr. Watson, you overwhelm me. I so seldom hear of the work, I thought it was dead and buried. My publishers give me a most discouraging account of its sale. But perhaps you are a specialist in that field.
Oh, good Lord, no. I'm a retired army surgeon.
Splendid. Nervous diseases have always been my particular hobby horse. I hope to specialise myself one day. But, well, at first a man has to take whatever offers. I beg your pardon, Mr. Holmes. I know how valuable your time must be. The fact is, a singular turn of events has occurred in Brook Street, and tonight matters came to such a head that, well, I decided to come and ask for your advice and assistance.
You are very welcome to both. Can you describe these events which have been troubling you?
To begin with, I must tell you something of my own circumstances. I was a London university man. I hope I'm not being immodest when I say that my student career was considered to be quite outstanding. There was a general impression that a promising and golden future lay before me. But there was one great stumbling block.
Your future was more promising than golden, perhaps.
You've hit it exactly, Mr. Holmes. My want of capital. A doctor who aims high is compelled to start in one of a dozen streets in the Cavendish Square quarter, which entails enormous rents and furnishing expenses, all of them quite beyond my meagre capacities. But suddenly, an unexpected incident opened up new possibilities. I had a visit from a gentleman by the name of Alfred Blessington, a complete stranger to me. He came to my lodgings and plunged straight down to business.
Mr. Trevelyan? Percy Trevelyan?
Why, yes. I don't think I've had the pleasure...
Same Percy Trevelyan who had such a distinguished career in research and won the Pinkerton Prize for his studies on nervous lesions.
It's very good of you to say so.
Answer me frankly, young man. You'll find it's in your own interest. You have the brains to take you to the top of the tree, but have you got the tact and diplomacy to keep you there?
I sincerely hope so. They say practice makes perfect, don't they?
Ah, but you don't have a practice, do you? So, what's holding you back?
Oh, there are various reasons. I don't think it's advisable to rush things. I prefer to take my time.
Poppycock. Come now. Cards on the table, young man. It's the old story, isn't it? More in your brains than in your bank balance, eh? But what would you say if I were to set you up in Brook Street?
You mean a practice of my own?
Why not? It's just like any other business speculation, and safer than most.
I don't quite follow you. What would I have to do?
I'll tell you. I've taken a house already. I'll furnish it, pay the staff, and run the whole place. All you have to do is wear out the chair in your consulting room, and hand over 3/4 of whatever you earn from your patients. You can keep the other quarter as pocket money. And pretty handsome too, eh?
Oh, we bargained and negotiated. I won't weary you with the details, Mr. Holmes, but by Lady Day I've moved in, pretty well on the terms he'd suggested. He continued to live in the house, upstairs in his own apartment. He has a weak heart and needs constant medical supervision.
You seem to be a very fortunate young man. A West End practice and a resident patient.
So I thought. However, since then, Mr. Blessington has begun to behave in a very eccentric way.
Yes, I'm finding it rather hard to picture your Mr. Blessington. What sort of man is he?
Physically, he's a very fat man, though it's apparent that at some time he's been even fatter, for the skin hangs about his face in loose pouches, like the jowls of a bloodhound.
And this eccentricity you speak of?
He's a man of singular habits, almost a recluse. He shuns company and hardly leaves the house, except to take a short constitutional each evening. He always walks up the road, across Oxford Street, then takes a turn round Cavendish Square and home again. On his return, he calls in at my consulting room to examine the books, gives me 5 and 3 for every guinea I've earned, and carries the rest off to a strong box upstairs. And I may say he's never had any cause to regret his speculation. From the first, it's been a success. Everything was going smoothly until one evening. It was a few weeks ago, September the 13th to be exact.
Dr. Trevelyan! Doctor! I must speak to you.
Good heavens! What on earth is the matter?
I've had a little shock. Help me to a chair. I must sit down.
Of course, of course. Why, man, you're as white as a sheet. You look as if you'd seen a ghost.
It's worse than that. I've just read something in the evening paper.
Oh? Show me.
No. I don't have it with me. I threw it away as soon as I'd read it.
What was it that upset you so much?
An item about burglary. Committed last night. Right here in the West End. Villains, a lot of them. They broke into a private house and made off with hundreds, thousands of pounds. Cash, bonds, silverware, jewellery. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. To think such a thing could happen so close to home. I tell you, I shall take precautions at once. First thing tomorrow, I'll have special bolts fixed to the windows. New safety locks on all the doors.
But why should anyone want to break in here? They couldn't possibly know about your strong box.
The strong box? Aye, the strong box, to be sure. They could have found out about it. These criminals have their ways and means. But if they imagine they're going to break into this house, they're making a big mistake. I'll be too clever for them. You'll see. Oh, yes, much too clever.
For a week he continued in a peculiar state of agitation, peeping out of the windows, spying down into the street. He even gave up his daily stroll before dinner. Then, as time passed, he seemed to conquer his fears and renewed his former habits.
And then, of course, something else happened.
Why, yes. How did you know that?
Something must have happened. Otherwise you wouldn't be here now.
Quite so. But let me try to put things in their proper order. 2 days ago, I received this letter by the first post. I brought it with me to show you.
In this establishment, Dr. Watson reads the letters.
Yes, Mr. Holmes listens. Thank you. A Russian nobleman, now resident in England, would be glad to avail himself of the professional assistance of Dr. Trevelyan. He has been for some years a victim of cataleptic attacks, upon which it is well known the doctor is an authority. He proposes to call at about 6:15 tomorrow evening, if Dr. Trevelyan will make it convenient to be at home.
And the patient turned up as arranged?
I was in my consulting room at the appointed time when the maid showed him in. An elderly man, grey, thin, almost emaciated. He was accompanied by a young man, tall and well-built, with a dark, fierce appearance, though he helped his elderly companion to a chair with surprising tenderness.
Count Orlovsky and Mr. Stefan Orlovsky.
Thank you, Maria. I will ring if I require anything.
Very good, Doctor.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
There, Papa. Are you quite comfortable?
Yes, yes.
You are not in a draft?
No, thank you, my son. This will do very well.
Forgive me, Doctor. We cannot take any risks. My father has to be careful at all times. We are both extremely glad to make your acquaintance.
I'm delighted to meet you.
I trust you will excuse my presence here, Doctor, but my father's health is a matter of the utmost importance to me.
That's very understandable. Perhaps you'd like to remain here during the consultation?
Oh, no, not for the world. It is more painful for me than I can say. If I were to see my father in one of these dreadful seizures, I am convinced I should never survive it. My own nervous system is exceptionally sensitive.
I understand. My waiting room just across the hall is at your disposal.
I am most grateful. I shall be within call if you should need me, Papa.
Yes, you are a good boy, Stefan.
Now, sir, as a preliminary, perhaps you would be kind enough to answer a few questions.
Of course. I will do my best to tell you as much as I can.
We discussed his case history, and I took copious notes. His answers to my questions were frequently very obscure. I attributed this to his limited command of English. Suddenly he ceased to speak, and when I looked up, I was shocked to see him sitting bolt upright, staring at me, his face a complete blank, his jaws shut tight, his whole body completely rigid.
cataleptic condition?
I was certain of it. My first reaction was one of pity and horror.
But your second, I fancy, was one of professional interest?
Well, yes. I must admit, from a professional point of view, it was very gratifying. I made notes of his pulse and body temperature, tested the rigidity of his muscles, and examined his reflexes. None of these were particularly abnormal. However, in the past I had obtained good results in similar cases by the use of nitrate of amyl, inhaled in small doses. I had some in my basement laboratory, so I went down to fetch it. When I returned a few minutes later, imagine my amazement upon finding the consulting room empty and my patient gone.
And the young man?
I ran to the waiting room. Stefan Orlovsky had also disappeared. The front door was closed, and I asked Maria, the Spanish maidservant, but she'd heard nothing. She's not been with us very long and is not as efficient as I could wish. Anyway, there was no solution to the mystery.
Where was Mr. Blessington during all this?
Out on his evening stroll. He came in soon afterwards, but I said nothing to him about the incident. He's a strange man, and quite honestly, I don't take him into my confidence unless it's unavoidable.
And you haven't seen or heard of the Russians since then?
I certainly didn't expect to. And then, this evening, at exactly the same time, they marched into my consulting room again.
Yeah, Doctor, I feel I owe you a great many apologies for my abrupt departure yesterday.
Well, I must admit I was very much surprised.
The fact is, when I recover from these attacks, my mind is very clouded as to all that has gone before. I woke up in a strange room, or so it seemed, and I found my way out in a dazed condition while you were absent.
As to me, seeing my father pass the waiting room, I assumed that the consultation had come to an end. It was not until we reached home that I realized the true state of affairs.
Well, there's no harm done, though I was a good deal puzzled. But now, if you would kindly step into the waiting room, I shall be happy to continue my interrupted consultation with your father.
Certainly, Doctor. I will see you presently, Papa.
Very well, my son.
For half an hour we discussed the old gentleman's symptoms, and after I prescribed for him, I saw him go off on the arm of his son. Later, when Blessington came in from his constitutional, I heard him go upstairs, and then, almost immediately, he burst into my consulting room like a man possessed.
Where is he? Where has he gone?
I'm sorry, I don't understand you.
The intruder! The burglar!
I can assure you there has been no intruder here, Mr. Blessington.
Oh, yes, there has. A man has been in my rooms. Who went up to my room?
No one. You're making a mistake.
Don't lie to me.
Please, try to control yourself. I'm telling you, nobody has been upstairs.
I'm sorry. I spoke hastily. No doubt you believe you're speaking the truth, but how do you account for the footprints on the stair carpet? Come and see for yourself. There! And there! Do you see? It was raining earlier this afternoon. Someone has left muddy footmarks upon the tiles. And on the stair carpet, too. You see? They continue all the way up to my sitting room.
Could they be your own prints? You were the last person to come in.
For God's sake! Are you blind? Those boots are a good inch and a half longer than mine.
Yes, that's true.
I demand to know who's been here while I was out of the house.
Well, a patient called upon me at 6:15.
Who was it? Did you leave him alone at all?
He's a foreign gentleman, Count Orlovsky. But I was with him all the time he was here. Although, now I come to think of it, he did have a son with him.
His son? And where was he?
In the waiting room, naturally. I can only suppose that during the consultation the young man must have gone upstairs for some reason.
Oh, God! What am I going to do?
Do you mean to say the young man has stolen something from your apartment?
No. Nothing like that. Nothing has been touched. Listen, I need help. You must help me. Do you hear?
Try to keep calm. If nothing is missing, surely it's not something...
You don't understand. Nobody understands. In God's name, is there no one who can help me?
It was then he thought of you, Mr. Holmes. I told him he could not possibly trouble such an eminent man, and he broke down and sobbed. He was in such distress. In the end, I had to promise him I would do my best to persuade you to come and investigate this remarkable mystery.
Investigate? But since no crime has been committed...
It's possible that a crime is about to be committed. I fancy that is what terrifies Mr. Blessington.
As I say, he's a very eccentric man. But if you'd only come back with me in the brougham, then you might at least be able to soothe him and perhaps make some sense out of these extraordinary incidents.
Very well. Come, Watson, let us go.
Oh, Dr. Trevelyan, I'm so glad you are here.
Maria, what's the matter?
I saw the carriage drop. I've been so frightened.
There. Come in, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson.
Thank you.
Now then, tell me what has happened.
It's Mr. Blessington, Doctor. He's upstairs. But he's very upset. He behaves most strangely.
In what way, strangely?
He has a gun.
What? We must go upstairs at once.
Stay where you are!
Good Lord.
I have a pistol. I give you my word that I'll fire if you come any nearer.
Mr. Blessington, this is quite outrageous.
Is that you, Doctor? I'm sorry. In the half-light, I thought for a moment... but those other men with you, who are they?
You asked me to bring Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and I've done so. This is Mr. Holmes and his colleague, Dr. Watson.
Good evening, Mr. Blessington. I'm sorry that we meet under such disagreeable circumstances.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I'm extremely grateful to you. Please come upstairs.
After you, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson.
Thank you. Like an animal at bay, Blessington had retreated to the darkest corner of the landing. Now he relit the gas, and we saw before us a man whose appearance testified to his jangled nerves. Shamefaced, he slipped the pistol back in his pocket and ushered us into his rooms.
Come in, Mr. Holmes. Come in. And Dr. Watson. I must apologize for my discourtesy. I'm very obliged to you for responding so promptly. No man ever needed your advice more than I do.
I hope we can assist you in some way.
Perhaps if you were to begin by giving us all the facts.
The facts are very simple. No doubt Dr. Trevelyan will have told you of the unwarrantable intrusion into this apartment.
He has indeed, and of the two men who called on him. Are you in any way acquainted with them?
Acquainted? No, indeed, sir. Why should you suppose such a thing?
You have no knowledge of them or why they should pursue you in this way?
Well, no. Well, it's very hard to say, isn't it? Didn't Trevelyan explain? I've never even met these men, never clapped eyes on them.
Yeah, but you have a shrewd idea of their identity.
Really, Mr. Holmes? You can hardly expect me to answer that question.
Would you be good enough to explain yourself, sir?
I'm simply... Since I never saw them, I can't give you any information about them. That's reasonable enough, surely.
Very well. Let me put this another way. Do you have any enemies, Mr. Blessington?
Upon my soul! What a thing to say, enemies indeed. Come here, please. This door leads to my bedroom. You see the large box at the foot of my bed?
The strong box? Yes, what of it?
I've never been a rich man, Mr. Holmes. Never made but one investment in my life, as Dr. Trevelyan will tell you. But I don't believe in bankers. I don't put my trust in banks. Between ourselves, what little I possess is inside that box. Now perhaps you'll understand what it means to me when unknown persons force their way into my rooms.
I'm sorry, Mr. Blessington.
Sorry?
I cannot possibly assist you if you try to deceive me.
My dear chap.
Well, that's pretty cool, I must say. Deceive you, indeed. I told you everything.
Good night, Dr. Trevelyan. Come, Watson.
No. Wait. Have you no advice to give me?
My advice to you, sir, is to speak the truth. Good night.
All the cabs seem to be taken. Shall we try the rank in Oxford Street?
No, not yet. Let's sit on this bench and consider the situation. Yes, the night air may clear our heads and cool my temper.
You were rather short with that poor wretch. He was in a blue funk.
Well, if he'd had the sense to be open with us, I might have been more sympathetic. As it is, I can only apologise, Watson, for bringing you out on a fool's errand.
Ah, never mind. You did your best.
It's the devil of it, it's the devil, yes. It's an interesting case underneath all that nonsense.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Personally, I can't make head nor tail of it.
Well, for a start, it's evident that there are two men, or more than two possibly, but two at least, who are determined to get at this fellow Blessington. Twice the younger man has gained access to Blessington's rooms while his confederate, by an ingenious device, kept the doctor occupied.
You mean the two Russians? But the catalepsy...
No, I doubt very much if they were Russians, and I'm fairly certain the cataleptic trance was fraudulent. It was easy enough to imitate. I've done it myself on occasion.
Have you? Good Lord, when was that?
No, that's another story, Watson, and just now I'm engaged upon this one. Yes, they're making a dead set at Blessington. No doubt about that.
Oh, both times they called, Blessington was out.
Yes, but by the merest chance. Their reason for choosing such a late hour for a consultation was to ensure there would be no other patient in the waiting room. They had no idea they'd hit upon the very time Blessington takes his constitutional.
But if that's so, why didn't they try to break into the strong box?
No, I don't believe that was ever their intention. I can read in a man's eye when he's frightened for his life. And Blessington is terrified. I'm certain he knows who those men are. But for some reason, he's concealing it.
Evening, gentlemen.
Huh?
Oh,
Evening.
Good evening.
Evening, madam.
Quiet tonight, innit?
Quiet. Very, very pleasant. We were enjoying the night air.
I know what you mean. Nothing to do and nowhere to go. That's the trouble, innit?
No. You misunderstand.
No, yeah, we were engaged in a discussion, trying to work out the solution to a problem.
Oh, yeah? You work at night, do you?
Yes, we do, yes, quite frequently. Forgive me, I hope you won't think we're being uncivil.
No, that's all right. I know what it's like when you've got to work.
Indeed, yes.
Ta-ta, gentlemen.
Ta-ta, good night, madam.
I think perhaps it might be as well if we made a move.
Really?
But before we go, with regard to the solution of the problem, there's one alternative that might not have struck you.
Oh, what's that?
Has it occurred to you that the entire story of the Russian invalid and his son, whom no one but Trevelyan has ever seen, could be a fabrication invented by Dr. Trevelyan? Has he been investigating Blessington's rooms for some purpose of his own?
Well done, Watson. Of course, that was one of the first thoughts that crossed my mind.
Oh, was it?
Yes, but I was soon able to corroborate the doctor's story. The young man's footprints were still on the stair carpet. Square-toed shoes, not pointed like the doctor's, and an inch and a half longer than Blessington's. Now, I think we may take it that the young intruder exists in reality. So, that was an interesting theory. Thank you very much.
No, not at all.
We must sleep on the problem tonight. I shall be surprised if we do not hear fresh news from Brook Street in the morning. Watson. Wake up, my dear fellow.
What time is it?
It's 7:30. I'm sorry to disturb you, but you must get dressed at once.
Why? What's the matter?
The Brook Street business. Dr. Trevelyan's room's at the door. He sent us an urgent message.
Some fresh news?
Dramatic, but ambiguous. Scrawled in pencil on a page of a notebook. See for yourself.
For God's sake, come at once, and in a very shaky hand.
He was hard put to it when he wrote that. I'm going down to send for a cab. Can you be ready in 5 minutes?
Damn it, Holmes, I've rung the bell twice. There's no one at home.
Well, that's impossible. Trevelyan would hardly have sent for us. Someone's coming.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, thank you for responding to my message so promptly. Please, come in. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, but I was upstairs in Blessington's rooms with the inspector.
Inspector?
You've summoned the police already?
I had no alternative. This is a dreadful business. Blessington is dead.
Good God.
Forgive me. I must confess, this has shaken me a good deal.
Yes, no doubt. But with your permission, Doctor, I think we should go upstairs at once.
Mr. Holmes. I'm very glad to see you, sir.
Good morning, Lanner. Watson, you remember Inspector Lanner?
Yes, of course. Good morning.
Good morning, Doctor.
You won't regard this as an intrusion, I hope?
Not at all, sir. If you'd care to take a look in the bedroom.
Yes, thank you. Blessington.
Poor devil.
Yes, sir. Pretty grim, I'm afraid. All right, Jorkins, you can leave that now. We were just about to cut the body down, sir. but you'd better see it as it was when we arrived.
Yeah.
Everything's just as we found it.
Still in his nightshirt. He must have gone to bed unable to sleep and decided to put an end to himself.
That is the obvious conclusion, certainly, yes. When was it discovered?
Blessington had a cup of tea brought to him every morning. When the maid entered his apartment about 7, she discovered this.
Yeah.
He tied a rope to the hook in the ceiling where the centre lamp used to hang and jumped off the top of that box.
The same strong box he showed us yesterday. Have you heard of the events leading up to this affair, Inspector?
I have heard something about them, yes, sir.
Have you formed any opinion?
Well, sir, judging by the expression on the face of the deceased, it was despair what drove him to it. Black despair and hopelessness.
I'm sorry to contradict you, but I think not.
Beg pardon, sir?
It's not despair you see in that face, Inspector. It is terror. Sheer, stark terror.
Well, sir, whatever you choose to call it, it's a horrifying sight, sure enough. You'll notice that the bed's been well slept in. I'd make a guess he killed himself around 5 in the morning. That's a popular time for suicides.
Judging by the rigidity of the muscles, I should say he's been dead approximately 3 hours. That appears to confirm your estimate.
Tell me, Inspector, have you noticed anything at all peculiar about the state of this room?
I wouldn't say peculiar, Mr. Holmes. We found 4 cigar stubs in the grate. The deceased appears to have been smoking heavily during the night.
Have you got his cigar holder?
No, sir. No sign of one.
No, his cigar case, then?
Oh, yes. That was on the dressing table. Here it is.
Oh, good. Quite so. This is a Havana. Yes, the stubs you found are of a different kind, imported by the Dutch from their East Indian colonies. Yes, 2 of them were cut with a knife, 2 had the ends bitten off, and by a set of excellent teeth. This is no suicide, Inspector. It's a deliberately planned and cold-blooded murder.
Begging your pardon, sir, but I must disagree with you there.
Oh? Why is that?
Well, several reasons. For one, why should anyone murder a man in so clumsy and difficult a fashion as hanging?
Well, that is what we have to find out.
And another thing, how could a murderer have got in?
But through the front door, I presume.
The front door was locked and bolted on the inside this morning.
Well, then it must have been locked and bolted after the murderers left the house.
Murderers? More than one? What makes you say that?
I've seen the traces. Perhaps you'll allow me a few moments to investigate further, and in the meantime, you might care to cut down that wretched object.
Yeah, very good, sir.
Well, Mr. Holmes, have you come to any conclusions?
Certainly, the main facts are perfectly plain. Tell me, Inspector, the piece of rope that was used, do you know where it came from?
Yes, sir. It was cut from a coil we found beneath the bed.
I can explain that. Blessington had a morbid fear of fire. He kept a rope close by so he could escape through the window in case of conflagration.
Excuse me, Mr. Holmes, your so-called murderers couldn't have known the gentleman would be so obliging. I mean, they wouldn't expect to find a rope all ready for their purpose, would they?
Only them had already seen it on an earlier visit.
You mean the young Russian?
Well, there can be no doubt who the criminals were. As I thought, 3 men were involved. The pair who masqueraded as the Orlovskis, and a third to whose identity I have no clue as yet. 3 men ascended to this apartment sometime after midnight. I verified that from the 3 sets of footprints on the stairs. Of course, Blessington kept his bedroom door locked, but they soon forced it open with the aid of a wire. You can see the scratches around the keyhole.
Yes, sir, that's all very well.
On entering the room, they proceeded to gag Blessington. He may have been asleep or too paralyzed with terror to cry out. Then, I believe, there was some sort of discussion. It lasted for a long time, and that was when those cigars were smoked. And it ended in their dragging Blessington from his bed and hanging him. That's all I can tell you at present.
Beg pardon, Mr. Holmes, but this is all conjecture. We're still no nearer finding out who these men were.
Never fear, Inspector. We shall soon have that information. Dr. Watson, might I trouble you to do me a small service?
Yes, anything I can do, of course.
I'd like you to go to Fleet Street and look up the files of the evening newspapers for the 13th of September last. Make a note of any burglaries that took place in the West End of London the previous night. And I suggest we all meet again this afternoon, shall we say 3 o'clock?
Certainly, where?
You'll find me in Baker Street, which is where I'm proposing to go now.
But, Holmes, what are you going to do?
I shall try to apply some logic to this tangled chain of circumstances, and at the same time, I shall have some breakfast. Good morning. Yeah, you are splendidly punctual, gentlemen. You've all arrived together, up on the hour. Come in, Trevelyan, Inspector Lanner.
Good afternoon, sir.
Watson, my dear fellow, I hope your researches proved successful.
No, I'm sorry, Holmes. Not to put too fine a point on it. I'm afraid I've drawn a blank.
Oh, surely not.
The fact is, there were no burglaries in the West End on the night in question.
But that's impossible. Blessington told me himself.
You're sure you didn't mistake the date?
I'm quite certain of it.
Well, there's no news of any burglaries that night. The only item of that sort concerned not burglars, but safe breakers. Bank robbers, to be precise.
There was a bank robbery in the West End.
No, the robbery had taken place a good many years earlier. 4 of the safe breakers were caught and sentenced. 1 of them was hanged. The other 3 got 15 years apiece. And on the 13th of September, several years before they had served their full term, they were released from prison.
The Worthington bank raid.
I see you remember the case, Inspector. Do you recall the names of the criminals?
Just a minute, let's see. Cartwright was the ringleader, he was hanged. The others were Biddle, Haywood, Almeida and Sutton. Now, Sutton turned Queen's evidence, and it was on his testimony that the rest were convicted.
Yes, thank you, Inspector. If you care to take Dr. Trevelyan with you to Scotland Yard, I think he will be able to identify photographs of the men. 2 of them as the bogus Russians, and a third as the informer, Sutton, better known to us as Mr. Alfred Blessington.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Trevelyan.
It's a chilly night. Come and sit by the fire.
You're very kind. Forgive me for imposing upon you yet again, Mr. Holmes.
No, not at all. I was hoping you might return to tell us how you fared at the Yard.
You were right, of course. Sutton was Blessington. Biddle and Haywood were the other 2. I recognise their pictures. But the other man, Almeida, was a stranger to me.
Yes, but where are they now? That's what I want to know.
Lying low, I suppose. The inspector seems pretty confident he'll run them to earth before long.
I hope so, indeed.
3 intruders. And yet, Lana tells us the front door of your house was locked and bolted from the inside after the villains left. That means there must have been someone else. A confederate within the house.
I don't see how that could be possible.
Perhaps I might interrupt you there. I noticed that when we arrived at Brook Street this morning, you opened the front door to us yourself.
So I did. Our Spanish maid, Maria, was in such a state of hysteria after discovering the body, she took to her heels and hasn't been seen since.
And I think you mentioned that she hadn't been with you very long. Spanish, you say, or could she have been Portuguese?
Possibly. Spanish, Portuguese, what difference does it make?
Well, only that Almeida is a Portuguese name. Well, don't you see?
Huh?
She must have been the contact in the house, the link with the other man.
How do you mean, the link?
I don't know. Wife, sister, fiancée. And now I come to think of it, at this very moment... Watson, have you the Times there? Yes? Yes, look up today's sailings in the European shipping lines.
Navigational news, shipping lines. Yes, here we are.
Good. Was there a ship bound for Lisbon today?
Lisbon. From Tilbury, the SS Nora Craner, sailing at 11 p.m. tonight.
Come, time is short. We must call a cab at once. Watson, have you sufficient light to read your watch?
Yes. 10 minutes to 11.
And we're approaching the entrance to the docks. We should be there in time.
Pray God that we are. It was a devilish plot.
3 men determined upon revenge. Twice they tried to get at the traitor and failed. The 3rd time they succeeded.
So, all that talk about burglary was just a blind.
Small wonder he should have been thrown into such a state of terror when he read in the paper that his cronies had been set free. The men he betrayed, at large and bent on vengeance.
But when he asked for your help, why didn't he tell you the truth?
Well, his secret was the shameful one. He dared not disclose it.
Now we know the reason for that long discussion around his bed. The 3 men were holding their own judicial court, prosecuting him and condemning him to death. No doubt they looked upon it as a form of rough justice.
Here we are. We must go directly to the shipping office. Watson, are you there?
Over here, Holmes. Well, sir, have the men been apprehended?
What's the matter? We were too late. There was an exceptionally high tide this evening, and the Nora Craner sailed 15 minutes early. By this time, she'll be heading for the open sea.
Can't a message be sent to Lisbon, instructing the local police to pick them up on arrival?
These things take time, Doctor. International bureaucracy, like the mills of God, grinds very slowly. I fear that the murderers have slipped through our hands.
Something interesting in the morning paper, Holmes? I thought as much. They seem to be particularly absorbed.
Yes. You remember the Brook Street mystery a few weeks ago?
I remember it very well.
Yes. Have you considered adding it to your chronicles?
No.
Why not?
It didn't seem worthwhile. After all, your part in it was hardly accentuated by the fact that the murderers got away.
Really?
What makes you ask?
There's a short paragraph in the Times which might interest you. Yes, it concerns the men who escaped.
They were caught after all?
No, it's not that. It's a brief announcement. Have a look.
The wreckage has been found of the ill-fated steamer Nora Craner, which was recently reported missing. She must now be presumed to have gone down with all hands off the Portuguese coast, some leagues to the north of Oporto. There were no survivors.
Rough justice, Watson. Rough justice.
In The Resident Patient, Sherlock Holmes was played by Clive Merrison and Dr. Watson by Michael Williams, with Robert Lang as Alfred Blessington, Clarence Smith as Dr. Trevelyan, David Kossoff as Count Orlovsky, George Winter as Stefan Orlovsky, Eric Allen as Inspector Lanner, Adjoa Ando as Maria the Maid, and Cyril Jenkins as the Lady of the Night. The violinist was Leonard Friedman. The Resident Patient was dramatized for radio by Peter Ling and directed by Enid Williams.
I hoped you enjoyed that episode. Next up is called The Adventure of the Final Problem.
There is a power, a deep, organizing power, a man who pervades London. He sits motionless like a spider in the center of its web, but that web has 1,000 radiations, and he knows every quiver of each of them. He is the organizer of half that is evil and nearly all that is undetected in this great city. He is the Napoleon of crime.
The Final Problem by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, dramatized for radio by Bert Coules, with Clive Merrison as Sherlock Holmes and Michael Williams as Dr. John Watson, and featuring Michael Pennington as Professor James Moriarty. The Final Problem.
Equals L over 1 plus E cos theta. So, you see, gentlemen, by the application of quite straightforward mathematical principles, the mystery becomes clear. The minor astronomical bodies have yielded up their secret and stand revealed for what they are, the scattered remnants of another world, now lost. Gentlemen, I thank you for your patience.
The overall shape is that of a pyramid. At the base, the great mass of the criminal fraternity, recruitable at need. As we go higher, we ascend in layers, moving all the time nearer and nearer to the heart of the organization. Each layer has fewer members. Level 3 consists of 25 agents. Level 2, which is known as the high table, of 9. These 9, and only these 9, have direct contact with a man at the apex of the pyramid here. Any questions, gentlemen?
Congratulations, James. Intellect.
Ah, Sir George, you're too kind.
Nonsense. It's been a long time since we had such a thought-provoking lecture.
I didn't allow myself to become, shall we say, too rarefied.
If you mean, did I follow your maths, my dear fellow? Of course I didn't.
Oh, dear me, dear me.
You will dine with us tonight, I hope. Just a few founder members. William Christie will be there.
Oh, my dear fellow, please forgive me. I fear I must honour a previous engagement.
Oh, well, if you must, you must. My secretary will arrange a cab for you.
Oh, that isn't necessary.
Nonsense. Least we can do. Jenkinson.
Yes, Sir George?
A cab for Professor Moriarty. No more questions? Right. Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Patterson.
Now, I don't need to remind you that next Monday's operation is the climax of 3 months' work. Don't let's have any mistakes. I'll be talking to you again before the day. Till then, for pity's sake, keep your mouth shut. You know why. Right, that's all. Mr. Holmes.
Patterson.
If you'll pardon my saying so, sir, you don't look well. This business is really taking it out of you.
He's a worthy opponent. I don't believe I've ever been so hard-pressed.
You're sure he doesn't realize we're as close as we actually are?
Quite sure. He still believes the high table is completely undiscovered.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we have a great deal of importance to discuss, so I would ask you to be brief and to the point. We shall begin with old business. Mr. Walmsley, the South African gold.
Procured exactly as per the plan. Colonel Moran has the details.
Delivery to our client?
All arranged.
Splendid. Mrs. Collier, the troublesome junior minister.
He will pay the agreed price.
Admirable.
The exchange has been set up for next Thursday, Covent Garden. My girl will hand over a full set of prints and the duplicate negatives.
The originals?
Return to the client. The money will be in the Colonel's hands by 6 at the latest.
Your usual efficient job, my dear.
Would you expect anything less, Moran?
Certainly not.
Enough. Mr. Aberstein, the removal operation. Mr. Aberstein.
Foiled.
Be so good as to amplify that statement.
The operation failed. Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes? That name has been heard far too often at this table of late. How many levels were involved?
6, Professor, and all the upward connections untraceable. We are perfectly secure.
Let us hope so, Mr. Aberstein. For all our sakes.
7 groups of men in all, with a sergeant in charge of each. Final details to be given out on Monday just before we move. I reckon we can pick up the whole of level 3 before they know what's hitting them.
And the high table?
Myself, 2 sergeants, 24 men, broken up into groups of 3 and 4, and arriving separately in unmarked vehicles. They should have no warning at all.
Are you absolutely certain of this?
It comes straight from one of Patterson's men.
Patterson should choose his underlings with more care. I expected better of him.
Does the man have any idea that this information will get to us?
Do you really have so low an opinion of my people, Moran?
Well,
as far as he was concerned, he was just boasting to a common tart. Besides, the girl's an expert. She made quite sure he forgot about it as soon as the words were out.
He has no suspicions.
He thinks she's been hanging around him because she likes him. Big, strong man, exciting job, you know the line. He swallowed it completely. Typical male arrogance.
You may give the girl a bonus. 10 guineas.
I already have.
They have the names of everybody on level 3.
That's what he said. I take it that Holmes is behind this.
Undoubtedly.
I thought you had him in check.
I did. Every move he's made against us has been blocked. Until now.
Are we in any danger?
Not yet. But Mr. Holmes must be dissuaded from pursuing this business any further.
Forgive me. I did not hear your knock.
You have less cranial development than I should have expected. It is a dangerous habit to finger loaded firearms in the pocket of one's dressing gown. You evidently do not know me.
On the contrary, I think it's fairly evident that I do. I can spare you 5 minutes, if you have anything to say.
All that I have to say has already crossed your mind.
then possibly my answer has crossed yours.
You stand fast?
Absolutely. Now be so good as to keep both hands in sight.
My dear Mr. Holmes, I have not yet discovered a way of disposing of my adversaries with my memorandum book. With your permission?
By all means.
Thank you. You crossed my path on the 4th of January. On the 23rd, you incommoded me. By the middle of February, I was seriously inconvenienced by you. At the end of March, I was absolutely hampered in my plans. And now, at the close of April, I find that I'm in such a position through your continual persecution that I'm in positive danger of losing my liberty. The situation is becoming an impossible one.
Have you any suggestion to make?
You must drop it, Mr. Holmes. You really must, you know.
You cannot expect me to agree to that.
No. A man of your intelligence must see that there can be but one outcome to this affair. It is necessary that you should withdraw. It has been an intellectual treat to see the way you've grappled with this business, and it would be a grief to me if I were forced to take any extreme measure. Oh, you smile, sir, but I assure you that it really would.
Danger is part of my trade.
This is not danger. This is inevitable destruction. You must stand clear, Mr. Holmes, or be trodden underfoot.
I am afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I am neglecting business of importance which awaits me elsewhere.
Oh, well. Seems a pity, but I have done what I could. I know every move of your game. You hope to place me in the dock. I tell you that I will never stand in the dock. You hope to beat me. I tell you that you will never beat me. If you are clever enough to bring destruction upon me, rest assured that I shall certainly do as much to you.
You have paid me several compliments, Mr. Moriarty. Let me pay you one in return. If I were assured of the former eventuality, I would, in the interests of the public, cheerfully accept the latter.
I can promise you the one, but not the other.
Of the dreadful events of the 4th of May, 1891, there were only 3 accounts in the public press. Of these, the first and second were extremely condensed, and the last an absolute perversion of the facts. I alone know the truth of the matter, and I am satisfied that the time has come when no good purpose is to be served by its suppression. It lies with me now, therefore, to tell for the first time what really took place between Professor James Moriarty and Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Holmes! What in the world are you doing here? How did you get in? I regret to say I took the liberty of entering through your back garden.
Holmes, what's wrong? Hang on, I'll light the lamp.
No. Forgive me. I prefer the dark. Have you any objection to my closing your shutters?
None in the least.
Thank you.
Holmes, what are you afraid of?
Air guns.
Air guns?
You can light a lamp now. It's quite safe.
What do you mean, air guns? Holmes, you don't look well.
I've been using myself up rather too freely.
Sit down.
Thank you.
What's all this about? I thought you were in France. Here.
Thank you.
So, French case is over.
There was no French case. It was necessary to convince certain people that I was out of the country.
But it was in the papers, the Times.
As Brother Mycroft exerting some influence. Might I trouble you for a match?
Yes, of course.
I think you know that I'm by no means a nervous man, but it's stupidity rather than courage to refuse to recognize danger when it's close upon you.
The air guns?
One particular air gun, uniquely deadly.
Holmes, what does all this mean?
It's not an airy nothing. Look, why didn't you tell me you were hurt? It's not serious. I'll be the judge of that.
Put your hand on the desk. That's it. Now, keep still.
Oh, sorry.
Holmes, what's going on? You look as pale as death.
I have been a little pressed of late.
By what?
You've probably never heard of Professor Moriarty.
Never.
Yes, that's the genius and the wonder of the thing. The man pervades London and no one's heard of him.
Holmes, calm down, please. That's better.
Oh, I tell you, Watson, if I could beat that man, if I could free society of him, I'd feel that my career had reached its summit.
Free society of him? What has he done?
For years now, I've been aware of a power, a deep, organizing power, behind every sort of case, behind forgeries, robberies, murders. I've felt the presence of this force.
A single individual.
He is the Napoleon of crime, Watson. If there's a paper to be seized, a house to be rifled, a man to be removed, the word is passed to Professor Moriarty, and the matter is organized and carried out.
If you know about this man, why haven't you had him arrested?
He's fenced himself around with safeguards. He does little himself. He only plans. It's his agents who do the work. They've sometimes been caught, but the power behind them was never so much as suspected until I deduced his existence.
Do you have any proof of all this? Evidence?
Well, for a long time, it seemed impossible. I was forced to admit that at last I had an opponent who was my intellectual equal. My horror at his crimes was lost in my admiration of his skill.
Holmes, I don't believe you know what you're saying.
And then he made a slip. Only a little slip, but it was more than he could afford when I was so close. I seized my thread and followed it, and it led me to him. In 3 days, Professor Moriarty and all the principal members of his organization will be in the hands of the police. Then will come the greatest criminal trial of the century, and a rope for all of them.
Holmes! If this man and his entire organization are within your grasp, why are we hiding behind locked shutters, like a pair of fugitives?
It was impossible for me to have done all this without his knowledge.
He knows that you're onto him?
He saw every step I took, but whenever he tried to break away, I headed him off. It's been the most brilliant bit of thrust and parry work in the history of detection. This morning he tried to warn me off in person. Drop it, Mr. Holmes. You really must, you know.
Did you actually come to blows?
Oh, that's not the professor's way. At least not until his logic tells him there's no other possible action.
And what's happened to your hand?
I was attacked in the street 3 times.
In broad daylight?
I had to go out and do some business in Oxford Street. I was crossing Welbeck Street and a 2-horse van nearly knocked me down. Then a brick came down from the roof of one of the houses, shattered at my feet.
A brick?
Yeah.
Yes, forgive me, but this man is a criminal genius, and he arranges for someone to throw a brick at you?
I called the police, of course. They tried to tell me it was the wind.
What happened next?
I spent the day at Mycroft's rooms in Pall Mall. Now I've come round to you.
And?
On my way, I was attacked by a rough with a bludgeon. Knocked him down. The police have him.
They know him as one of this Moriarty's men?
No. No possible connection will ever be traced. Is Mrs. Watson here?
No. She's away on a visit.
You're quite alone?
Quite.
That makes it easier. Will you come away with me for a week onto the continent?
The continent? Where?
Anywhere. It's all the same to me.
Holmes, in all the years I've known you, you've never once suggested taking a nameless holiday.
Matters have gone so far now that they can move without my help, so it's obvious that I can't do better than get away for the next few days.
Yes, I think you should get away from everything for a while. I'd be pleased to come with you.
And start tomorrow morning.
If that's what you want.
Oh, yes, it's absolutely necessary.
Well, good. You'll stay the night.
No.
Holmes, you're not well. I'd like to keep an eye on you.
No, Doctor. You might find me a dangerous guest. I must go.
What about the air gun?
I have to take that risk. I fancy they may have lost my trail. Now, Watson, your instructions.
I presume I'm to go directly to Victoria Station in the morning.
No. Dispatch whatever luggage you intend to take to Victoria tonight. Use a messenger you can trust and pack nothing of value.
Very well.
Yeah, in the morning, take a hansom, but not the first or the second that comes along. You must take the third cab. The third cab, you understand?
Perfectly.
And drive to the Strand end of the Lowther Arcade.
The Lowther Arcade? Why not there?
Yes, Watson, this is vital. The instant that your cab stops, dash through the arcade. You must time yourself to reach the other end at exactly 9:15. You'll find a small brougham waiting for you. Get into it, and you'll reach Victoria in time for the Continental Express. Now, do you understand?
Where shall I meet you?
Do you understand?
Yes, of course.
The second first-class carriage from the front. A compartment will be reserved for us. Now, I must go. The lamp.
I beg your pardon?
It must be dark. I leave through the window and across the garden. If they're still watching me, that may put them off the scent. Now. Goodbye, Watson. Till tomorrow morning. Remember your instructions. To the letter.
Come in, Jenny.
Doctor, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Is it a patient?
No, Doctor. It's the police.
I'm sorry to disturb you, Dr. Watson.
What's all this about, Constable?
Do you know where we might find Mr. Sherlock Holmes, sir?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Isn't he in his rooms?
No, sir, he isn't. Thank the Lord.
What do you mean?
Well, sir, about an hour ago, near as we can judge, someone tried to burn the place down.
Oh, my God.
Doctor? Are you all right, sir? There you are, sir. No, there must have been some mistake. This can't be right. The only reserved compartment on the train. Well, then, this gentleman is in the... Excuse me, Padre.
Signor?
I think you must be in the wrong place.
Scusi.
I'm sorry, sir. I'll have to ask you to get aboard. We're about to go. But my companion is... Perhaps he's already on the train, sir. Making his way up the corridor. Now, if you please. Very well. Mind the door. Keep your head inside, please, sir.
Holmes. My dear Watson, you haven't even condescended to say good morning.
Holmes!
Quiet, we can't relax just yet. Look.
What?
There.
Let me through! Let me through!
Hey, now then, sir, that's not necessary.
That train must be stopped. Open this barrier. Stop that train.
I can't do that, sir.
Of course you can't. My apologies.
Regulations, sir, for your own safety.
I completely understand. Tell me, where is the traffic superintendent's office?
Are you telling me that was Moriarty?
Yes. Oh, with all our precautions.
But how on earth could he have known our plan? He could hardly have recognized you, done up like that.
Grazie, signore. Mille grazie. He didn't make any slip in coming.
No, I did exactly what you advised.
You recognize your coachman?
No.
It was my brother.
Mycroft driving the carriage?
The situation was serious enough to persuade him out of his usual well-worn round.
Yes, I can believe it.
I was worried sick. I was convinced that they caught up with you.
So you've no more doubts as to my stability, Doctor?
I hoped I wasn't quite that transparent. Look...
Not another word. In your position, I should have been every bit as sceptical. And don't think I don't appreciate your agreeing to come with me, even if it was only to chart my progress into complete insanity.
I hoped I might be able to help you.
Yes, and I thank you for the thought. We must plan what to do about Moriarty now.
But this train connects with the boat at Dover. We've shaken him off very effectively.
But, my dear Watson, I tell you, this man is on quite the same intellectual plane as myself. Well, surely you don't imagine that I should be baffled by so slight an obstacle.
What will you do, then?
What I should do.
And what would you do?
Engage a special train.
But he'll be too late.
By no means. This train stops at Canterbury, and there's always at least a quarter of an hour delay at the boat. He'll catch us there.
Ooh, one would think we were the criminals. Let's have him arrested on his arrival.
It would be to ruin the work of 3 months. Nothing can be done until Monday.
What then?
We shall get out at Canterbury.
What about our luggage?
It may help to throw Moriarty off the trail. I told you to bring nothing of value.
You anticipated this?
We'll treat ourselves to a couple of carpet bags and encourage the manufacturers of the countries we travel through.
We're still going to the continent?
Certainly. We'll make a cross-country trip to New Haven and over to Dieppe. Would you be so kind as to inquire about the trains?
Faster! Faster! Here we are. We change at Ashford Junction for Hastings, Hastings to Lewis, Lewis to New Haven. Arriving New Haven Harbour at 3:45. Holmes?
Already. You see?
What?
There.
Another train.
Moriarty's special.
It can't be. He couldn't possibly have arranged it so quickly.
Didn't I tell you his web extends into every corner? He'll be here in a moment. Behind that luggage, Watson. Quickly, man! There are limits, you see, to our friends' intelligence. Shall we proceed? We'll stay in Brussels for the next 2 nights and then move on to Strasbourg, if you agree.
Certainly.
Scotland Yard have instructions to wire me at Strasbourg on Monday night. Oh.
Holmes?
He's escaped them. I should have known when I left the country there was no one to cope with him.
Holmes. I wondered where you got to. Are you all right?
I think you'd better return to England, Watson.
What? Why?
Because you'll find me a dangerous companion now. Man's occupation is gone. He'll devote his whole energies to revenging himself upon me.
But he can't possibly know where you are. When he discovered we'd left the train, he surely must have thought you decided to stay in England.
You could be right.
And in any case, I've never yet walked out on you when danger was near. I have no intention of starting now.
Good old Watson.
Would you care to hear my recommendation as your doctor?
I'm sure I should find it fascinating.
You said yourself that you've been working much too hard lately. If you're going to carry on the hunt for Moriarty when we get back to England, you'll need to be in perfect shape. I prescribe that we continue with the holiday.
Where shall we go?
Meiringen, the principal village in the narrow and fertile Hasley Valley. Particularly of note, the Austrian tower and the church, erected in the early pre-Reformation period and renowned for its 14th century Old Testament frescoes. The beauty of the village and the surrounding area has won for it the title of the front garden of the Bernese Overland.
What does your florid companion have to say on the more practical subject of places to stay?
Many fine hotels and boarding houses. And there's a list. What do you think?
Yes. This one seems singularly appropriate. The Englischer Hof.
Two beers, mein Herren.
Dankeschön, Herr Steiler. Thank you.
Bitte schön.
Isn't this a magnificent spot? Yeah. You can see 2 seasons in a single glance. Spring at the foot of the mountains and winter at the peak.
Ooh. Well, perhaps you should consider widening your literary activities to encompass the travel guide.
I shouldn't mind if it meant getting to places like this more often. I'd love to bring Mary here. Her health's not been too good lately.
Oh, my dear fellow. I'm sorry to hear it.
Oh, it's nothing too serious, thank God. Holmes, will you do something for me? Name it. Tell me about Moriarty. What's his background? Where did he come from? What's he like?
Which of those questions shall I answer first?
Well, describe him. Give me a thumbnail sketch.
He's tall and thin, rather pale, and with sunken eyes. He has a habit of oscillating his head slowly from side to side. It makes him look curiously reptilian.
And is he actually a professor?
Oh, yes. Or was, at least.
What of?
Mathematics. At the age of 21, he gained a chair at one of the smaller universities. His publications had a European vogue.
Well, describing a man with a brilliant career ahead of him.
But he had hereditary tendencies of the most diabolical kind. A criminal strain ran in his blood.
In spite of his extraordinary mind.
Oh, his intellect made it all the more dangerous.
Amazing.
No, not at all. I've mentioned to you before now that I would have made a formidable criminal.
You have? Well, I believe it.
In Moriarty, I see the man I could have become.
Oh, my dear Holmes.
I mean it. I can see into the man's mind. I know what drives him, and I understand it completely. There's a beauty to mathematics, Watson, a joyful symmetry, an ultimate perfection for those who can find it. It teaches the value of order and logic and clarity. Well, in our different ways, we both follow the same path, Moriarty and I.
I can't accept that.
Oh, it's perfectly true. We both try to impose a certain order on a chaotic world. Well, if my path was by combating evil, and his by embracing it, well, that's a small enough difference among so many similarities.
Holmes, you're talking about a man whose record is black with unutterable infamies.
Started writing it up already, have you?
I've given it some thought.
I think, Watson, I might say that I've not lived wholly in vain.
Oh, my dear chap.
If my record were closed tonight, I could survey it with equanimity. The air of London is the sweeter for my presence. In over 1,000 cases, I'm not aware that I've ever used my powers on the wrong side.
Of course not.
And now I face the most dangerous and capable criminal in Europe. Your memoirs will draw to an end, Watson, on the day I crown my career by terminating his activities.
You really plan to retire?
My retirement would be a price I'd willingly pay. Oh, what a beautiful evening.
Yes, indeed. This air is incredibly clear. The stars will be glorious tonight.
Yes, I've often thought that I should have used my powers to look into the problems of nature.
Rather than those of society, you mean?
Superficial problems of an artificial state.
But think of the injustices you've fought. Think of the people you helped. It's not only London. If you'd followed a different line, the world would have been the poorer.
Thank you, my friend.
Herr Steiler, this is a most excellent breakfast.
Dr. Watson, you are too kind.
Ham is superb.
It is cured by my own hand. Please to take as much as you wish.
Thank you.
Well, tell me, Herr Steiler, did you enjoy your years at the Grosvenor Hotel?
One was certainly, Herr Holmes. A very happy time. But this is wonderful. You are a mind reader. Herr Doctor, he is a mind reader.
Oh, you're not the first to think so, Herr Steiler.
But how did you know?
Watson?
Well, let me see. Your English is excellent, of course.
You are most kind.
And you serve from the left and clear from the right, as an English waiter does.
It is the only correct method.
But I can't see how you knew about the Grosvenor Hotel in particular, Holmes.
Mind reading?
No, nothing so esoteric. Only at the Grosvenor could you have learned the recipe for last night's fricandeau of veal. The sauce is quite unmistakable. I must say I'm surprised that Monsieur Remarque divulged it to you.
He was my very good friend. It was his gift to me on his retirement. Herr Holmes, you are unglaublich, unbelievable. Gentlemen, for years to come, my guests, they shall be told of this, the Englishman who sees my life story in his fricandeau of veal. This is good, is it not? To hear you laugh so in my hotel, it makes me content. You are content also, Herr Holmes?
Yes, Herr Steiner. I am content.
Gentlemen, everything was well?
Yes, everything was very well, thank you.
And what are your plans for today?
What do you suggest?
The walk across the hills to Rosenlow is very popular. A little village, most beautiful.
Huh? What? Sounds ideal. Work off some of last night's dinner, not to mention breakfast.
Then Rosenlow it is.
But on no account must you go straight there.
Why ever not?
Because you must make this small detour on the journey. Have you a guidebook?
Here.
Thank you. Yes. Here, you see. Here you must go.
But why?
Because your life will not be complete until you have seen the great falls of Reichenbach.
It's immense! Look at it! A man could spend his life probing the secrets of such a power. And the sun! I swear I can almost hear voices shouting up out of the water! Steiner was right! I wouldn't have missed this for the world! This will stretch your pen, Watson! A worthy subject for your prose! Holmes! No sarcasm! No comments about cheap romanticism and pandering to the masses? Oh, no, my friend. Not here. Not today. Do you hear something? Over there. Let's get back to more secure ground.
Herr Dr. Watson, wer ist's?
I'm Watson.
Es ist Not, Doctor, for you.
It's from Herr Steiler. An English lady has just arrived at the hotel. Gravely ill, he says.
Ja, Herr Dr. Blutung.
I'm sorry? Hemorrhage. Steiler says he's asking for an English doctor. He doesn't think she'll live.
You must go.
Yes, I'm afraid I must. I can't refuse. Will you come back with me?
No, I believe I'll go on.
Alone? Are you sure?
Herr Doctor, most urgent, Herr Steiner said.
Yes, I'm coming.
I shan't be alone. This lad can stay with me and be my guide on to Rosenlow. I'll wait for you there. How will that be?
You will stay? Wegweisen Sie mein Freund nach Rosenlow?
Ja, das will ich, mein Herr.
Very well. I'll be back with you as soon as I can.
Take care, Watson.
As soon as I can.
Now, Rosenlow.
Wie lang ist... Mein Junge? Wo sind Sie? Hey!
Save your breath, Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
I trust he's no worse.
Doctor?
You didn't write this? There's no sick Englishwoman here.
Sick Englishwoman? Certainly not. I wrote nothing.
Oh, my God.
Dr. Watson! Hey, Dr. Watson!
calm down. Think. He's gone on to Rosenlau. Exactly as we were. Oh, God. Still leaning against the rocks, exactly where I had last seen him, was Holmes' alpenstock. The sight of it turned me sick and cold. He had not gone to Rosenlau. I stood for a minute or two to collect myself, for I was dazed with the terror of the thing. Then I began to think of Holmes' own methods, and to try to practice them. It was only too easy to do. There were 2 lines of footprints clearly marked in the wet ground. Both led to the end of the path overlooking the falls. There were none returning. Dear God, they must have fought hand to hand. Oh, as I retrieved Holmes' alpenstock, something bright and gleaming caught my eye. It was his silver cigarette case, and resting beneath it, neatly folded, and in a hand as firm and clear as if it had been written in his study, a note addressed to me.
My dear Watson, I write these few lines through the courtesy of Mr. Moriarty, who awaits my convenience for the final discussion of those questions which lie between us. I am pleased to think that I shall be able to free society from any further effects of his presence, though I fear that it is at a cost which will give pain to my friends, and especially, my dear Watson, to you. I have already explained to you, however, that no possible conclusion to my career could be more congenial to me than this. Indeed, if I may make a full confession, I was quite convinced that the letter from Myrigan was a hoax. I made every disposition of my property before leaving England, and handed it to my brother Mycroft. Pray give my greetings to Mrs. Watson, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.
There can be little doubt that a personal contest between the 2 men ended, as it could hardly fail to end, in their reeling over, locked in each other's arms, into that fearful torrent. There, deep down in that dreadful cauldron of swirling water and seething foam, will lie for all time the most dangerous criminal and the foremost champion of the law of their generation. In an incoherent and deeply inadequate fashion, I have tried to give some account of my many strange experiences in the company of the world's first and only private consulting detective. But now, with a heavy heart, I lay down my pen. These have been the last words in which I shall ever record the singular gifts of my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, whom I shall ever regard as the best and the wisest man whom I have ever known.
final problem, Sherlock Holmes was played by Clive Medicine and Dr. Watson by Michael Williams, with Michael Pennington as Professor James Moriarty, Frederick Treves as Colonel Moran, Sean Arnold as Inspector Patterson, Anne Windsor as Mrs. Collier, Jane Whittenshaw as Jenny, Dr. Watson's maid, Terence Edmund as Peter Steiler, Richard Pierce as Lockwood, Alan Barker as Walmsley, and Norman Jones as Sir George. The violinist was Leonard Friedman.
This next show is called Sherlock Holmes and the Story of the Six Napoleons.
Look, that's enough of that. It's not helping, is it? That's better. Now, let's go over it again. You were at the opera.
Yes.
Attending Her Highness the Princess.
Yes, it is my job.
After the opera, you went back with the princess to her suite at the Dacre Hotel. Then what?
I helped her get ready for bed. I locked her jewels in the safe. I put away her clothes. I did what I always do. Why am I here? Non ho fatto niente, perché non mi credi?
All right. Look, you may not believe me, but I'm trying to help you. Now, you locked her jewels in the safe, you put away her clothes, then what?
I have done nothing. Why won't you believe me? Oh, please.
The Six Napoleons by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Dramatized for radio by Bert Coules. With Clive Medicine as Sherlock Holmes and Michael Williams as Dr. John Watson. And featuring Donald G. as Inspector Lestrade. The Six Napoleons.
Signor Holmes, I beg of you, help my daughter.
Please, Signor Vernucci, it is not necessary to beg.
You will take the case?
I shall.
Oh, grazie mille. Thank you. You must realize, Signor Holmes, I am not a wealthy man.
That is not a relevant factor.
Oh, I have heard of your generosity towards families such as mine, but I dare
All
not
that interests
hope...
me is the case. The challenge. That and to see justice done.
Justice. Yes. My son, I have a son, Pietro. He did not wish me to come here.
He doesn't want to see his sister released?
No. To Pietro, the family, it is everything. To all of us. But he is young, wild a little. To all the time we fight. I tell him, this is your home now. You must make a place here. You must speak English. But he will not hear.
What was his objection to your consulting me?
Forgive me. He believes that you and the police, you are one. The law, yes. La legge, le autorite.
The authorities. He's mistaken.
I told him. But this terrible business, it has made him so irragionevole.
Uncontrollable.
Uncontrollable, see. He feels very strongly the shame to the family. You understand?
I understand.
Your room adjoins the princess's suite.
What?
Next door. Your room is next to hers.
Yes, of course.
Of course. There is a door between them. Of course. Who else knew that the princess had taken a sleeping powder that night?
No one.
No one but you. Listen to me. If you did do it...
I didn't. No, I didn't. How many times must I say it?
If you did it, for God's sake, admit it. Confess. If you don't... Look, it's not always going to be up to me. Things could get a lot worse for you.
Worse? Worse than this?
This? You wait till you see the inside of a prison. This is nothing.
The police have no case.
But they will not let me see her.
The circumstantial evidence is very strong, but they...
Signor Holmes, forgive me. I do not understand.
L'evidenza circostanze è molto forte.
Yes.
But they have no actual proof.
Then they must let her go.
Not necessarily. Or at least not yet.
What can we do?
I must find the true criminal.
You will do it. You are Sherlock Holmes.
Signor, I am not infallible. Far from it.
You will do it. You must. Signor Holmes, my Lucrezia is not strong. What will this be doing to her?
Maria Santissima, perdonami.
I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes, but you're wasting your time.
Inspector, you have no definite proof.
Well, that's for the jury to decide. Look, sir, there's a lot of pressure. Visiting royalty. Well, I don't have to explain it to you.
You have to be seen to be making progress.
Orders straight from the top.
It's better to have an innocent prisoner than no prisoner at all.
We don't know that she's innocent. Look, whether she did it or not, I know perfectly well that we've got no case. If you could have given me a better suspect, I'd have bailed her days ago.
May I speak to her?
Yeah, of course.
Vanucci, someone to see you. Stand away from the door.
Oh, God. Inspector, what's wrong?
Bloody little fool. Oh, damn. Would you give me a hand to get her down, sir?
Porci, bestie, assassini inglesi!
Pietro, che cosa succede?
Canaglie e assassini!
Pietro!
Lucrezia è morta! Suicidio!
Gesù Maria! Dio abbia pietà della sua anima!
Basta con il tuo amico investigatore inglese! Adesso facciamo le cose a modo mio, sì? Oh, sorry. In English. Now we'll do things my way.
Well, that was first class.
Yes, indeed.
Mrs. Hudson certainly has a way with steak and kidney pudding.
You said as much to me on the first day we moved here.
Good Lord, did I really?
Yes. It led to a discussion on overfeeding as a possible method of murder.
Oh, yes. Would that really be possible?
Ah, relax, Lestrade. Mrs. Hudson has nothing but the warmest opinion of you, as far as I know.
Ah.
Yeah.
Brandy, Inspector?
Ah, thank you, Doctor.
So, Lestrade, anything remarkable on hand?
Oh, no, Mr. Holmes. Nothing very particular.
Huh? Then tell me about it.
Well, there's no use denying that there is something on my mind, but it's such an absurd business.
Is it out of the common? Here.
Ah, thank you. Oh, yes. Is that all right?
Oh, well, we have a taste for the unusual. Holmes?
Thank you.
But this is simply trivial.
Ah, just as you like.
Well, the first case was 4 days ago, at the shop of a Mr. Morse Hudson in the Kennington Road. He sells pictures, statues, that sort of thing.
I'll be with you directly, sir. Please look around. Hey!
One plaster bust of Napoleon Bonaparte. Not worth more than a few shillings.
Senseless hooliganism.
Well, that's what it was put down to at the time, Doctor. But then it happened again.
Another plaster bust.
Another Napoleon, too.
Sounds more in your line than mine, Watson.
I agree.
What, madness?
Exactly. But when our madman commits burglary, that brings it away from the doctor and on to the policeman.
Burglary? Yes, that is more interesting.
The bust was smashed against the garden wall. Nothing else was taken or damaged in any way.
Yeah, well, this is certainly novel.
I thought it would please you, but I've not got to the end yet.
Not another one.
The Napoleon in Dr. Barnicot's hallway was one of a pair. The other one was in his surgery 2 miles away.
Also smashed?
Oh, yes. The poor doctor was no sooner recovered from one burglary than he arrived at work to find a window forced and bits of plaster all over his consulting room floor.
It certainly is singular, not to say grotesque. Were Dr. Barnicot's Napoleons duplicates of the one in Morse Hudson's shop?
Barnicot bought his pair from Hudson. They were taken from the same mould.
What theory are you following?
Well, none beyond the obvious. A madman with such a hatred of Napoleon, he has to smash any image of him he sees. Hard to believe, I know.
There are no limits to the possibilities of monomania.
Monomania?
Yes, modern French psychologists call it the idée fixe. The sufferers are usually totally sane in every other way, but under the influence of their idée fixe, they can be capable of almost anything.
But why Napoleon in this day and age?
Well, your burglar might have some hereditary family injury that was originally caused in the Napoleonic War.
No, that won't do. Lestrade's man knew exactly which houses to break into. No amount of idée fixe would tell him that.
Well, how do you explain it?
I don't attempt to.
Oh, so you do think it's too trivial to bother with?
I don't call anything trivial. Some of my most classic cases have had the least promising beginnings. You remember the Abernethy family, Watson?
I doubt if I'll ever forget them. Dreadful business.
But the whole affair would never have been suspected if I hadn't noticed how far the parcel had sunk into the butter on a hot day.
Good heavens.
So I can't afford to smile at your 3 broken Napoleons, Lestrade. I'd be obliged if you'd let us hear of any fresh developments.
Chi è? Ah, buonasera. Andiamo allora. Andiamo. Buffoni, segui tua sorella.
Yes?
There's coffee on the table.
Yes?
And a cab waiting at the door. Lestrade sent a telegram.
Surely it could have waited. Surely it could have waited until after breakfast.
Come instantly, it says. Instantly!
Gentlemen, this is Mr. Horace Harker.
Of the Central Press Syndicate. Good morning to you, Mr. Harker.
You know my work, sir?
Indeed I do.
It's an extraordinary thing. All my life I've been collecting other people's news, and now this has happened, and I'm so confused and bothered that I can't put 2 words together.
Mr. Harker, why don't you tell these gentlemen exactly what occurred?
If I'd come in here as a journalist, I should have interviewed myself and had 2 columns in every evening paper. As it is, I'm giving away valuable copy by telling my story over and over to a string of different people.
Mr. Harker, perhaps if you give us the details, Mr. Holmes may be able to throw some light on what happened. That would give you a valuable exclusive.
You're right, sir. You're quite right. Well, of course, you understand these things. Oh, it's a queer business, Mr. Holmes.
I don't doubt it. Something unsettling on the front doorstep, I believe.
Well, yes, but how do you know that?
It's been swilled down not more than a few hours ago. And the crowd outside would hardly have gathered for a simple burglary. No, nothing less than attempted murder will hold the London messenger boy.
Nothing attempted about it, I'm afraid.
It's murder? Then your agitation is perfectly normal, Mr. Harker. You should be sitting down.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor.
That's better. Good. When did you find the body?
Just after 3 o'clock this morning. I was writing in my den at the top of the house. I thought I heard a noise from down here. I listened, but there wasn't anything else. I supposed it must have been outside.
And then?
A sound that would ring in my ears as long as I live.
Yes. Did you investigate?
With the poker in my hand, sir. And I found the poor fellow on my top step. There was a great gash in his throat.
Did you see anyone else, Mr. Harker?
No, Doctor.
Mr. Harker fainted.
Entirely understandable.
And Constable Upton found him and raised the alarm.
Mr. Harker, the noise that first alerted you, it did come from inside the house, didn't it?
It did, sir. I found a window open. Someone had been inside this room.
Was anything damaged or taken?
Something was taken, Doctor, but it passes my understanding. All that had gone was a plaster bust.
A plaster bust of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Wonderful. But I thought you were guilty of exaggeration, Doctor. Mr. Holmes, that is wonderful.
A bust which you purchased Morse Hudson of the Kennington Road.
Oh, I'm afraid you're quite wrong. I bought it from Harding Brothers department store in Kensington. What a pity.
Well?
Who found it, Lestrade?
The regular beat constable. I haven't got enough men to mount searches for missing statues, Mr. Holmes. The chief constable would have a fit.
Yes, no doubt. Anything, Holmes?
Oh, we're a long way to go yet.
The size of those pieces, it wasn't particularly large.
About the same as the others.
Hardly worth stealing.
But it wasn't stolen, or at least it wasn't taken very far. It's not more than 100 yards.
Presumably the thief's idea was simply to smash it without being heard.
Exactly. Now, why else come to an empty house?
But why this one? There's another one much closer to Mr. Harker's. We passed it on the way here.
Watson?
Well...
I can't see it.
This empty house is by a street lamp. He wanted to see what he was doing.
Excellent.
Well, it's a fact, all right. But what are we to do with it?
Remember it. File it away. We may come across something later that bears on it.
Just at the moment, I'm rather more concerned about the murder.
Have you identified the dead man?
Fascinating. May I?
Be my guest. He won't mind.
This fellow's a foreigner. What do you think, Italian? It's very likely. What was he wearing, Lestrade?
Oh, he was rather poorly dressed.
He's not a labourer. Look at his hands.
Was there nothing on him to identify him?
Nothing.
What does it mean? Is he the thief? Surely he wouldn't have gone back to the house after he smashed the statue. It's more likely that he surprised the thief and challenged him. Which means our burglar is also a murderer.
Yes, a murderer who delayed his getaway long enough to examine the bust. Doesn't that tell you something about the motive behind all this, Lestrade?
These damn busts, I tell you, they're nothing but a blind alley.
Yes, well, I believe I've finished here now. What was he carrying?
Oh, it's all here. An apple, some string, shilling map of London, and a photograph. A sorry enough collection.
No weapon?
There was a knife lying in the blood beside him.
His or the murderer's?
We don't know.
You're right. Sorry collection.
What steps will you take now, Inspector?
Well, the most practical way of getting at it is to identify the dead man. Once we've done that, we have a good start in learning who might want to kill him. Don't you think so?
It's not the way I'd approach it.
What would you do, then?
Oh, you mustn't let me influence you. You go on your line and I'll go on mine. We can compare notes afterwards.
Very good. This is where the real detective work starts, isn't it? Hard slog and routine. Not like your adventure stories, Doctor. Hard slog and routine. It could be weeks before either of us turns up something useful.
Call round at 6 o'clock tonight.
Why have we come back here? Shouldn't we be getting on with things?
Really, Doctor?
Where's your sympathy for a fellow man of letters?
Holmes, he's a journalist.
Nonetheless, I made him a promise, or rather you did, on my behalf. Taking no chances.
Can you blame him?
But it's not likely to happen again.
Mr. Holmes, Doctor, won't you come in?
Thank you, no, Mr. Harker. We're in something of a hurry.
Can I give you any more information?
No, but I can give you some. I've quite made up my mind about this case.
My dear sir.
Oh, yes. You may tell your readers that Sherlock Holmes is convinced that a dangerous homicidal maniac with Napoleonic delusions broke into your house last night.
That's wonderful. Just what I need for my article. Gentlemen, I don't mean to be rude, but the deadline for the evening edition...
Of course. Good day to you, Mr. Harker.
Good day, gentlemen. And thank you, Mr. Holmes. Thank you.
Holmes, you don't seriously believe that? Don't I? Well, perhaps I don't. Look at the height of that window.
I beg your pardon?
The window where our friend got in last night.
Yes, I see what you mean. Pretty inaccessible. So, he was a very agile sort.
Like a monkey, despite Lestrade's over-enthusiastic washing away of the blood.
He could hardly have left it there.
There are still several interesting traces. He was a short man, comparatively long in the leg, and rather slight.
The man in the mortuary doesn't fit that at all, so I was right. He isn't our burglar.
No, he isn't. But he was extremely interested in him.
How do you know that?
Because he was carrying his photograph.
What's Lestrade going to think when he finds out you took that?
I'll go back to him tonight.
Stealing evidence is a serious offence.
Not as serious as murder.
You thought that Morse Hudson was the common factor in all this, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
But Mr. Harker bought his Napoleon from somewhere else.
Harding Brothers department store. There must be a link. We'll speak to the manager.
I'm sorry, sir. Both Mr. Hardings will be absent until late this afternoon.
Damn.
I'm very sorry, sir.
I'd like to examine your purchasing records.
That is confidential information, sir.
This is a very serious business, Mr.
Stock, sir. I'm very sorry, but there's nothing I can do. You must come back later. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Of course.
Gentlemen.
Damn, Holmes.
Come on! What we pay rates and taxes for, I don't know, when any ruffian can come in and break one's goods.
Mr. Hudson...
It's disgraceful, sir. A plot. That's what I call it. No one but an anarchist would go about breaking statues.
Mr. Hudson.
Red Republicans, that's what they are.
Mr. Hudson.
Oh.
Who did you get the statues from?
Who did I get them from? You want to know who I got them from?
Yes, sir.
Well, from Gelder and Company, Church Street, Stepney. They're a well-known supplier in the trade, have been for over 20 years.
How many did you have?
How many? 3, sir. 3. 2 for Dr. Barnicott, and the third one smashed in broad daylight on my own counter. Anarchists, sir.
Would you please look at this?
What about it, sir?
Do you know him, Mr. Hudson?
Do I know him? No, I don't. Yes, I do, though. His name's Beppo. I never did know his surname. He did some odd jobs for me a week ago. Then he disappeared. No idea where he went.
So, we know our murderer's name, at least. Or part of it.
And we have him as a common factor, both here and in Kensington. Well, that's worth something. But most important, we have the manufacturer of the busts. On to Stepney.
Look at this place.
A city within a city.
This isn't a city. It's a disgrace. No one should have to live in conditions like this. Let's find this factory.
Yes, Herr Holmes, I remember the item well. A copy in plaster of the famous head of the Emperor by Devine. The original is in marble, of course.
How many copies did you make, Herr Gelder?
Oh, that is impossible to say. Hundreds.
Hundreds?
It used to be a most popular item, but one can only sell so many. We make it no more.
We're particularly interested in a batch you sold to Mr. Morse Hudson of Kensington.
I will see what I can find. Yes, here they are. June the 3rd of last year. And they were the final 6.
6, Herr Gelder? Hudson bought only 3.
Oh, impossible. Wait. That's Sayemir. Herr Holmes, you are quite correct. A batch of 6, as I said, but only 3 went to Herr Hudson. The other 3 were made to special order for the brothers Harding.
Well, thank you, Herr Gelder. You've been most helpful.
Gentlemen, you are welcome. Oh. Alberto, be careful with those boxes. Oh, these Italians, they are impossible.
Why do you employ so many?
One must take what one can get. And for the real work, they can be superb.
Do you recognize this man?
Oh. The rascal, yes, indeed. I know him very well. This has always been a respectable establishment, Herr Holmes, and the only time we have ever had the police in here was over this fellow. He knifed another Italian here in my yard.
Was the man killed?
No, Doctor. Gott sei Dank. He lived. And this Beppo got off with 12 months.
When was this?
Just over a year ago. 13 months, perhaps.
And where did the police catch up with him?
Here, in my works. This villain led them a chase all through the building, like a monkey he was.
Was he indeed? Thank you, Herr Gelder.
If you are looking for him, he has a cousin who works here still. I dare say he could help you.
No, not a word to the cousin, I beg you.
Very well.
It's extremely important. This man must not be given the least suspicion. Kensington outrage, murder by a madman.
So, Mr. Horace Harker got his account into print after all.
Yes, 2 columns of highly sensational and flowery prose. You like it.
More coffee?
Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the well-known consulting expert, has come to the conclusion that the grotesque series of incidents which have ended in so tragic a fashion arose from lunacy rather than deliberate crime. No other explanation can cover the facts. What do you think of that?
It's masterly. On your part, I mean. That will be picked up by every other newspaper. Our man won't have the least idea that you're onto him.
The press is a most valuable institution, if you know how to use it. Drink up.
Here you are, gentlemen. 3 busts of Napoleon Bonaparte at 6 shillings each, supplied by Gelder and Company, Stepney. 3rd of June last year. I'm afraid they're all sold now.
Do you know who the buyers were, Mr. Harding?
I can very easily tell you. I pride myself on keeping meticulous records, Mr. Holmes, as do you, I dare say. Here they are, June and July. Now...
wait, Mr. Harding.
Mr. Holmes?
May I see the index finger of your right hand?
My dear sir.
It is of some importance.
Very well.
Yes, as I thought. Thank you. Now, the names and addresses, if you'd be so kind.
What a pity you didn't recognize the man in the photograph.
I'm afraid real life seldom as neatly ordered as Mr. Harding's record books. But there are certain to be several Italians on the staff, or cleaners and so forth, ideally placed to take a look at the ledger.
And recently, too, which is why there was no dust on its top edge to be transferred to Mr. Harding's finger. Am I right?
Entirely. Well done.
I can see that the Italian thread runs right through this case, but I still don't understand where the Napoleon busts fit in.
The material they're made of is far more important than their subject.
Please, none of your cryptic clues. I think I prefer being told nothing at all. What is it?
The doormat. A left boot mark with an inward twist. Unmistakable. Lestrade, my dear fellow. Haven't kept you waiting?
No, not at all. Good evening, Doctor.
Inspector?
Well, any luck, Mr. Holmes?
I've had a very busy day. Not entirely a wasted one. I can now trace each of the busts from the beginning.
The busts? Well, you have your own methods, and it's not for me to say a word against them. But I think I've done a better day's work than you. I've identified the dead man.
You don't say.
Well done, Inspector.
And found a cause for the crime.
Splendid.
There's an officer at the yard who makes a speciality of Saffron Hill and the Italian Quarter. Inspector Barnes. He knew our victim as soon as he caught sight of him. His name is Pietro Vannucci from...
Pietro Vannucci, of course.
From Naples. He's believed to be connected with the Mafia. which, as you may know, is a secret political society which enforces its decrees by murder.
Yes, I had heard something of that sort.
So you see, the affair begins to clear up. The man in the photograph, which I shall be obliged if you return, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, my apologies, Lestrade. Careless of me.
Thank you. Now, as I was saying...
Excuse me one moment, would you?
Yes. This fellow is probably an Italian too. Another member of the mafia, like as not. He's broken the rules in some fashion, and friend Pietro is set on his track. He dogs him, waits for him outside the house, and in the scuffle receives his own death wound. How's that?
Excellent, Inspector. I've no doubt you've got it. But I didn't quite follow your explanation of the destruction of the busts.
The busts? Ah, that's nothing. Petty larceny, 6 months at most. It's the murder that I'm investigating.
The next stage?
Simple. I'll go down to the Italian quarter, find the man in the photograph, and arrest him. Will you come with me?
I think not.
Just as you like.
But if you'll come with us tonight, I fancy we'll be able to help you lay him by the heels.
You know where he is?
Well, I can't say for certain, but I do have great hopes.
We'll be going to the Italian quarter?
No, to Chiswick.
Chiswick?
Mrs. Hudson, an express messenger, if you please. Inspector? Inspector?
What the devil? Oh, it's you, Doctor. Time, is it?
Yes. Very nearly. I must say, when he said tonight, I didn't think he meant at this sort of hour.
Oh, why do we do it?
Sometimes I wonder. Did you get any sleep at all?
Precious little. No offence to your sofa.
Doctor.
Holmes's orders.
Splendid. They've all retired for the night.
How very unusual of them. I hope you know what you're doing, Mr. Holmes.
I take it this is Laburnum Villas. Bravo, Watson. Yes, I thought it more likely than Lower Grove Road, Reading.
I'm glad you two know what all this is about, because I'm damned if I do.
Well, it's simple enough, Lestrade. We're going to catch your criminal in the act, if the odds fall in our direction.
And how long are we going to have to wait?
It may well be some time.
Wonderful. I don't suppose we can smoke, can we?
Better not to. At least it's not raining. What was that?
What?
To your left, there.
Is that him?
Quiet, wait. Look at him. He really is like a monkey. Yes, he's inside. Let's go closer. Yes, near enough, I think. Watson. Ready. Excellent.
There he is. He's carrying something.
Of course he is.
Now?
Not yet. Let him get away from the house. Now.
Maledizioni.
Look out for the knife! No, you don't! Now!
I strongly advise you not to move.
Are you all right, Mr. Holmes?
I believe so.
Good. Come here, you.
I did exactly as you told me, Mr. Holmes.
You did it superbly, Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Lights burning until 2. Window open a crack. The good Emperor in the front room, everything.
I hope there wasn't too much damage, Mr. Brown.
Oh, none at all, Doctor, none at all.
Excellent.
Though I feel bound to say that a little disruption would have been a price well worth the paying. My goodness, such excitement.
Pity about your bust, though.
Oh, I'm sure he is proud to have been of service.
Canalia.
That's quite enough of that kind of talk. Sit back there.
Oh, get back!
That is a nasty piece of work, isn't he?
He'll sing a different tune once we've got him back at the yard. Barnes knows all these gentry. You put a name to him, and you'll find that my theory of the mafia
Lei
will
non
work.
sa niente della mafia.
Ah, you see? My theory will work out all right.
Don't you think so, Mr. Holmes?
As a matter of fact, Lestrade, I do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm exceedingly obliged to you for the way you laid hands on him. As neat a job as ever I've seen.
Inspector.
So, that's another one over and done with.
I don't think so.
No?
Why don't you call round at Baker Street again tomorrow? There are one or two details still to be finished off.
Are you sure?
Quite sure. Come for dinner.
Good. Now you've found it, you're going to tell me what it is?
Soon.
Silly of me to ask. Where have you been most of today, anyway?
Paying my respects to an old client. The good inspector. Watson, I prefer to say nothing until after dinner.
Of course, if that's what you want.
Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no.
Watson, this case goes much deeper than Lestrade ever suspected. There's been great suffering caused. We are about to make some small restitution, you and I.
So you see, gentlemen, I was quite right. This Peppo character is well known in the Italian community as a ne'er-do-well. And I've no doubt he ran foul of one or other of the ruling families. And they set out to hunt him down. And before you ask me, Mr. Holmes...
Sorry, forgive me, Lestrade. You say?
Before you ask me, he refuses to say one word about those blessed busts.
He must have had a reason, Inspector.
Some kind of grudge against Gelder and Company, if you ask me.
Could well be.
If you ask me.
My visitor, I think.
It's all right, Mrs. Hudson. The gentleman's expected. Mr. Sandiford of Reading, I presume?
Indeed, sir. Have I the honour of addressing Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
You have. Well, I trust your journey wasn't too arduous.
Yes, I fear I am a little late. The trains were awkward.
Oh, dear. Where'd you come in?
Oh, thank you. Gentlemen.
Now, Mr. Sandiford, you have the item.
Thank you again, Mr. Sandiford. I trust that your journey back to Reading will be less awkward.
Mr. Holmes, that document...
The transferal of ownership?
Quite. Is that normal in matters such as this?
Oh, yes. Absolutely normal, I assure you. Good evening.
Gentlemen, my apologies for keeping you waiting.
Don't mention it. What's one more bust of Napoleon between friends? Especially one you just paid £10 for.
Indulge him, Inspector. Let him do this in his own way.
Do we have any choice in the matter?
Gentlemen, observe. First, I cover the table. Then His Imperial Majesty, the last of his line, the only survivor of the batch of 6, goes in the centre, so.
It's a plain enough likeness for all this fuss to be made over it.
You must admit it's interesting to see one in one piece for a change.
Oh, for the love of heaven.
Gentlemen, let me introduce you to one of the most famous objects in the world. The Black Pearl of the Borgias.
Thank you. This is truly amazing. Doctor.
The Black Pearl of the Borgias.
It disappeared over a year ago from the bedroom of the Princess of Colonna at the Dacre Hotel. The press cuttings are here, if you're interested. I was consulted on the case.
I didn't know that.
You were away at the time, and I couldn't throw any light on it.
The papers had a field day with the actual crime, but I don't remember anything about a solution.
It was hushed up. The princess's maid was suspected, but it never came to trial. She went and... My God. Her name was
Lucrezia Venucci.
Venucci?
The sister of the murdered man
who proved an easy recruit to the Mafia in his thirst for vengeance against the true criminal, especially since the Mafia were able to tell him exactly who that was.
Beppo. Beppo stole the pearl.
And was still carrying it the first time that the Venucci boy caught up with him.
The knifing incident at Gilda's factory.
Yes, Venucci failed to kill Beppo, but he did put pay to his plans. The police were there in minutes, and Beppo couldn't afford to be caught with the pearl on him. So, as they chased him through the factory, he got rid of it into the base of one of the 6 Napoleons on the drying rack.
So all this nonsense was him looking for the right one? Good grief. It's amazing that he could trace them after a year in jail.
Well, he had the advantage of members of his own community passing him information. It was his bad fortune that the pearl was in the only bust he never actually laid his hands on.
His bad fortune? And our good.
Good fortune a year too late. The shame she brought to her family was more than Lucrezia Venucci could bear. She hanged herself in her cell.
Oh, God.
Pietro Venucci's one desire was to avenge the death of his sister. The passage of a year did nothing to diminish it. He must have been dogging Beppo since his release, till he finally caught up with him on Mr. Horace Harker's front steps.
Where his thirst for vengeance proved to be stronger than his skill with a knife.
One more life uselessly thrown away. A family destroyed because of my failure to solve a straightforward burglary.
Well, I've seen you handle a good many cases, Mr. Holmes, but I don't know that I ever knew a more workmanlike one than that. We're not jealous of you at Scotland Yard. No, sir. We're proud of you. And if you come down tomorrow, there's not a man, from the oldest inspector to the youngest constable, who wouldn't be glad to shake you by the hand.
Thank you, Lestrade. Thank you. Put the pearl in the safe, Watson.
Holmes?
And get out the papers of the Conk-Singleton forgery case, would you?
Of course.
In The 6 Napoleons, Sherlock Holmes was played by Clive Merrison and Dr. Watson by Michael Williams, with Donald G. as Inspector Lestrade. Lucrezia was played by Federe Holmes, Venucci, Alberto and Harding by John Church, Brown and Gelder by David Holt, Pietro and Stock by Matthew Morgan, Beppo by James Telfer, Hudson and Sandiford by John Fleming, Harker by Peter Penry Jones, and the Inspector by Eric Allen. The violinist was Leonard Friedman. The 6 Napoleons was dramatized for radio by Bert Coules and directed by Patrick Rayner.
This next show comes from the series called The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This episode is called The Madness of Colonel Warburton.
Ladies and gentlemen, 50 feet of rope, 20 feet of steel chain, sealed bandages over the eyes, ears, mouth, and other natural orifices. Would anyone care to examine the restraints?
Of course not.
Colonel?
No, not necessary, thank you.
As you wish. Are you quite comfortable, my dear? Then I shall conceal you from view. And we can begin. Friends, let us pray.
The Madness of Colonel Warburton by Bert Coules, with Clive Merrison as Sherlock Holmes and Andrew Sachs as Dr. John Watson, and featuring Timothy West as Colonel Warburton, Eleanor Bron as Mrs. Bessemer, and Struan Roger as Mr. Bessemer. The Madness of Colonel Warburton.
unmistakable. Yes. Right foot dragging. Yes, must be tired. Top of the stairs. Pause. Rest. And on, and now. Watson, welcome home, welcome home, welcome home.
Oh, it's good to be back.
Now, you had a bad journey. The train was late. No, the train wasn't late. You had trouble getting a cab.
Oh, not now, old man.
Yes, trouble with the cab.
Holmes.
And then you had to wait in line behind three other men. Then you had to lift your own suitcase on board. 3 other men, that's dreadful.
Holmes, show me your arm.
And then lecture me, Doctor. I'm in too good a mood.
You're far too good. Come here. Now.
I'm cutting down.
Are you indeed?
5% solution. It's better than 7, surely. I thought you'd be pleased.
So, my dear, how is everything?
Now, James, I've already told you stop fussing. It couldn't be nicer.
There's plenty to occupy you, then.
Well, I'm never bored, if that's what you mean. There are so many people to talk to, and there's always someone who needs my help.
Now, don't you go squandering your time on every lame dog, Elizabeth. I know what you're like.
Oh, squandering my time? Don't be foolish, James.
Oh, right. I suppose that's not really an issue.
No, not really.
Pleased? Good God! Oh, what's the use? You've heard it all before.
Well, that's true enough. Just as you've heard my reasons.
Holmes, just because you don't have any work, you don't have to poison yourself with that filthy stuff.
Yes, I do. My work is my oxygen. Take it away and I suffocate. I'm only alive and my brain has something to do.
And you're seriously telling me that cocaine supplies that?
If only I could make you see the clarity, the insight, the understanding. Without it, I can't live in your empty, everyday world, Doctor. It's like a prison.
Wasn't there anything while I was away?
Nothing of any interest. Sorry, Watson.
Oh, here. I brought up the Post. There might be something.
Let's see. Nothing. Social invitation. Bill. Nothing.
Oh, what have you got?
Posted late last night in central London, but the writer lives out of town. A young man, well-educated, with firm opinions, and the matter's important but not urgent, because...
Because if it were, he would have sent a telegram.
Bravo, Watson, bravo.
Well?
Well, what?
It's something important.
Oh, yes.
Then it could be a case.
It certainly could.
Well, then, for the love of heaven, open it.
I can't do that.
Why not, for pity's sake?
It's addressed to you.
Oh.
Here.
Thank you. Oh, it's from Michael Warburton.
A friend?
Son of a friend. Well...
An acquaintance?
Yeah, my old CEO from the Berkshires, Colonel James Warburton. Retired now. This is about him.
Something's wrong.
So, everything's looking good, then?
Good. Good doesn't begin to describe it, my dear. It's simply beautiful, James. Heaven is simply beautiful.
Yes. Yes, I think you could say that something's wrong.
So, Mr. Warburton.
Lieutenant Warburton, Mr. Holmes. I followed my father into the regiment.
Very good. Now the facts, if you please.
But surely you've seen my letter?
If you please.
Very well. My father is Colonel James Warburton. He's a soldier of great distinction, a man of intelligence and honour, and the holder of the Victoria Cross. He is also absolutely convinced that his late wife, my mother, is communicating with him from beyond the grave.
A man's beliefs are his own affair, surely.
Not if they affect the lives of other people, Mr. Holmes. On the advice of my dead mother, he...
Go on, Lieutenant.
On the advice of my dead mother, gentlemen. The old man's planning to give away everything he owns.
To the regiment? Or to some charity?
No, Doctor, not to a charity. He's giving the whole lot to the couple who bring him the messages from his wife.
Of course, I'm sure it's her. I ought to know my own wife, man.
Yes, of course.
Besides, some of the things she says, no one else could possibly know them. Everyone here says the same thing.
Yes, I know. But even so, I mean, it goes against all reason.
You still have doubts, Sir Robert?
Mrs. Bessemer.
You still have doubts, but you were open-minded enough to come.
The Colonel here was very persuasive.
We meet again on Saturday, Sir Robert. Come with an open mind and a clear heart, and there could well be a message for you.
For me?
We all have friends in the land of mist, Sir Robert. Companions, colleagues, loved ones. Will you come?
Yes. Yes, I will.
Does your mother actually appear at these seances?
My mother is dead, sir.
Well, then does someone purporting to be your mother appear?
No. As I understand it, there's just a voice in the darkness.
Who is the medium?
Her name is Mrs. Bessemer. It's her husband who runs things, that's all I know.
And you desire me to demonstrate to the Colonel that these Besmers are frauds and the message is fake?
Exactly so.
Do you have any proof?
Proof? I don't need proof. Good God, surely you're not suggesting that this business could be genuine.
I have no data. Until I do, I prefer to keep an open mind.
An open mind?
The scientific approach, it's my way.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Holmes.
Well, sir, it may be your way, but it isn't mine. Look, my father is besotted with the Bessemers. He insists on singing their praises to anyone who'll listen. His old friends, my friends. Dr. Watson, you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I'm afraid I do. The Colonel is making himself a laughingstock.
Exactly.
And you with him?
I'll not deny it. But it's him I'm thinking of. His reputation, his good name. And beyond that, the honour of the regiment itself is at stake. I can't just stand by and let it happen.
I see.
So if you can't help me, Mr. Holmes, I'll find someone else to snap him out of this insanity.
Insanity? You think the Colonel's actually lost his mind?
I wish I did think that.
What do you mean?
If he were mad, certifiably mad, then he couldn't be held responsible for his actions.
And if there's no accountability, there's no shame, no disgrace?
Exactly.
The military mind. Fascinating. Ah.
What's the matter?
I believe we're about to experience a visitation of our own. Won't you come in, Colonel? It's a little unfriendly to converse across the room, though I understand you're accustomed to somewhat greater distances. I am Sherlock Holmes. You might recall my associate, Dr. Watson.
I know who you are. What has my son been telling you?
Father...
Be silent, sir. You've no idea what you're dealing with. Mr. Holmes, has my son actually engaged you professionally?
He's inquired after my services. I've given him no answer, as yet.
Excellent. Then we can consider the matter closed.
I think not.
I beg your pardon.
Lieutenant, I'll give you my decision in the morning.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
I'm not accustomed to being treated in this manner.
And now good day to you both. Watson.
Yes, this way, please, gentlemen.
Dr. Watson, Mr. Holmes. Father, you coming?
The Colonel? Very well. Mr. Holmes, this affair has implications beyond your understanding. I suggest that you keep your meddling nose out of matters which do not concern you. Good day.
Well, well, well.
You were insufferably rude.
Yes, it's a useful technique sometimes. Well, what do you think?
Well, he's not mad. Just gullible.
And you've made up your mind on the case.
But, Holmes, the dead don't return in order to offer financial advice.
Perhaps not. We'll see.
Yes, sir.
It's all right, Rose. I'll deal with this.
Of course, sir.
Can I help you?
Mr. Bessemer, is it?
Maybe. Who wants to know?
Collins, Jonathan Collins. Perhaps I have the wrong house.
Well, that depends, Mr. Collins.
Well, I was told that you can put me in touch with someone.
Who told you?
A client. I work at one of the city banks. Perhaps if I give you my card?
Thank you.
Small establishment, but select. Perhaps you've heard of us?
I have indeed. Please, come inside.
Thank you.
My wife is a wonderful woman, Mr. Collins. A wonderful woman who's been blessed with a wonderful gift.
Well, so I've been given to understand, yes.
Who is it you have in spirit?
Beg pardon?
Who is it who's passed through the veil? Your own wife, perhaps, sir? A parent?
Oh, I see. It's my sister, sir. Beatrice, taken from me by illness.
Oh, it must have been a terrible blow.
Unendurable, Mr. Bessemer. I wasn't present at the passing, you see. She called out for me, but I wasn't there.
How distressing.
She wanted to say something to me.
A message?
Well, I can only suppose so, but I wasn't there. It's eating me up, Mr. Bessemer. What was the message? What could it have been? I have to know. Can you help me? Tell me you can help me.
We can help you.
Huh?
This is my wife.
Have no more fear, Mr. Collins. You've come to the right place.
Well, what happened then?
It was all disappointingly down to earth. For a trifling donation of 40 guineas.
How much?
Yeah, I'm invited to the next seance. 8 for 8:30.
The medium is secured. We can begin. If you'll take your places.
Yes, of course.
There were 6 of us altogether, not including the Bessemers.
Was the Colonel there?
Oh, yes.
Did he recognize you?
Please, Watson.
Oh, sorry.
Now, as you all know, we have 2 new members of the Circle with us tonight.
Yes.
Mr. Collins here has recently lost his sister to the spirit world.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. You're very kind.
And Mrs. Fryer grieves for her daughter.
Janie.
No, you mustn't grieve, Margaret. She's not taken from you. She's just moved on, that's all. You'll see.
Yes. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you all.
They come, as you all have come, in search of the great truth. Mr. Collins, Mrs. Fryer, friends, if you'll put your hands flat on the table.
Like this?
Yes, that's the way. Now, we all grasp the hands of the people next to us.
The circle of power.
Oh, yes, of course.
Holmes, this is the purest poppycock.
Is it?
Well, of course it is.
Now, for the benefit of our new friends, I must explain that even though she's isolated behind the curtain, Mrs. Bessemer is under our supervision at all times. The least movement will be felt in the control ropes tied to her wrists. Colonel, you have yours.
I have.
Mrs. Cole?
As safe as the Bank of England.
Very good, very good. Now, if we can all compose ourselves.
We all sat there with our hands touching. Mrs. Bessemer was out of sight, tied up behind her curtain. Then Bessemer reached out behind him and turned out the lamp. It was pitch black. Oh, my dear Lord.
It's all right, Mr. Collins. The power is upon her.
Mrs. Bessemer?
Don't be alarmed. This is perfectly natural.
Mummy? Mummy? Mummy?
Oh, dear God.
Mummy?
Janie, darling, is it really you?
Of course it's me, Mummy. Janie, sugar cane.
Oh, I used to call her that.
It is all right. It's all right.
Talk to her, Mrs. Fryer.
Oh, yes. Janie, darling, are you all right?
Of course I am.
Oh, thank God, thank God.
Amen.
I have to go now, Mummy.
Oh, no, you mustn't. Stay here with me.
I can't, Mummy. They won't let me.
What? Who won't let you? What do you mean?
I try to come again, Mummy, if they'll let me. Come every week.
No. Something touched me. Something touched my face.
What? It was her spirit departing from the circle. You're very privileged to have felt it.
You're so lucky.
Now, let's compose ourselves, friends. I feel there's more to come.
Good evening, James.
Ah, my dear.
I have something for you.
What do you mean, Elizabeth? Something for me?
There's too much doubt in the world, James. Too many people have closed their minds to the truth.
People who should know better.
Yes. The power is strong tonight. Your belief makes it strong. Believe, James.
I do believe.
I bring you something for those with no faith. I bring you proof.
Elizabeth?
Don't break the circle. Stay where you are, all of you.
Oh, my God, look.
Dear God.
Heaven protect us.
Keep calm. Keep perfectly calm.
There was something in the center of the table. Something darker than the darkness. A shape.
Holmes, what are you saying?
It moved. It was growing. Stretching.
A trick?
It changed. It became a form.
Nobody move. It won't harm us.
No. No, she won't. Oh, now, come on.
It was a figure, kneeling in the center of the table. There was something in her hand. She laid it in front of the Colonel, and then she was gone.
I'm going to put the light on.
Mrs. Bessemer, is she all right?
My dear. Wait.
What happened?
This happened.
What's it?
What is that? It's what she promised me. My proof. It's my wife's wedding ring. She was buried wearing it.
Well, Doctor?
What kind of human being robs a grave for profit?
You're convinced it was some sort of trick, then?
Of course it was a trick. You were in total darkness. They could have done more or less anything. Were there any other manifestations?
No, that was the grand finale.
Oh, Mr. Collins' sister didn't show up then?
No.
Oh, they hadn't had time to dig up enough details to make it convincing.
Yes, the same thought occurred to me.
Oh, so you're not completely on their side. Here.
Thank you. I'm not on any side, not yet.
I'm pleased to hear it. So, what will you tell the Colonel's son? Will you accept the case?
Oh, didn't I mention that? I already have. I'm going out. Don't wait up. Very well. Now. Well. Fascinating.
Oi, you!
Wasn't that just a touch drastic, burgling their house?
I didn't burgle it. I didn't get inside.
No, only because you were nearly caught by the police.
Oh, give me some credit, Watson. I'm more than a match for a tired constable with a nagging wife and lumbago. Besides, he wasn't the reason.
Then what was?
The reinforced glass, the triple locks on the windows, and the case-hardened bolts on the back door. How Mr. and Mrs. Bessemer value their security. What are they protecting, do you suppose? Their lives?
Or their secrets. There's been a development.
So, something happened while I was out?
A message.
From our client?
From his father.
Oh. Another warning for me to back off.
Actually, the message was for me.
Oh.
Yes, the Colonel wants to see me. Tomorrow.
Gentlemen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Your health, Colonel?
Frankly, Doctor, I'm sick and tired of hearing about my health. The Berkshires.
The Berkshires.
Thank you for coming. I wasn't too sure that you would.
Why did you want to see me, Colonel?
To ask you a question.
What question?
Do you believe that I'm mad?
No, I don't.
Then you think I'm deluded?
I think you may have fallen victim to some very clever tricksters.
But you've not actually made up your mind on the subject.
Well...
Good man. Now, listen, Watson. I have a proposition for you.
Splendid.
Oh, you think so?
Well, don't you? It means I don't have to risk the disguise again. You'll be there as a legitimate, invited guest. Couldn't be better. What's your objection?
Well, suppose the Bessemers know who I am.
I'm sure they will. John H. Watson, the famous crime writer.
And biographer of a certain celebrated detective. If I walk into
why
their
should
house...
they make the connection? You said the Colonel hasn't told them that I'm involved.
No, but even so.
You'll simply be there as a friend of one of the regulars and a possible convert.
Oh.
So why should they be suspicious?
I still don't like it.
Alerting the Besmers isn't what's worrying you, is it? What's really wrong?
Well, you've already said it. The Colonel's invited me because he thinks I'll be convinced. He wants me to sing their praises in the Strand magazine.
And you can't see that happening?
Well, of course I can't. If I go, it'll be a betrayal of trust. I can't justify it.
I've been making some inquiries of my own. A little discreet investigation into the other sitters.
Oh, what were you looking for?
Oh, discharged servants, garrulous neighbours, relatives, given to gossip, any possible source for the Besmers' private knowledge.
And?
And I found nothing. I need more inside information. Watson?
Open your hearts. Open your hearts and open your minds, and they will appear.
John. John. Can you hear me? John.
My God.
John, aren't you there? Speak to me, please.
Who is it?
Oh, John, have you forgotten me so soon? It's Mary. It's your wife.
The Besmers are crooks. I want them stopped.
You have proof?
In all the years we've worked together...
Tell me what's happened.
They presented me with Mary. They had the damnable gall to conjure up my wife like some 10th-rate music hall act.
You saw her?
I saw nothing. I heard a lot of platitudes about love and faithfulness and heaven, and I felt... Well, never mind what I felt. And don't you dare ask me if it could have been real. I swear to you, on everything I hold dear, my Mary was not in that room. You believe me?
I believe you. Beyond your first name and your wife's, were there any other private details?
No, none.
Nothing they couldn't have discovered for themselves, then. Your names, even the very fact that you had a wife who died young, it's all a matter of public record.
Yes, but what about the other sitters? I heard things no one else could possibly have known. They all said it. It's their main reason for believing. So the Besmers must be getting private information from somewhere.
There is another possibility.
There is?
Think about the atmosphere, the build-up, the expectation, the darkness, the tension. You must have felt it.
Oh, yes, I did.
And think about the others, the look in their eyes, the hunger, the need for reassurance.
You're saying they're more than halfway convinced, even before the seance starts?
And so they read more into the messages than is actually there, exactly.
Yes, that makes sense. It would help with the voices, too. They want them to be real.
And the result is instant faith.
Instant riches, too, at 40 guineas a time. But I still don't know...
What's troubling you?
The ring. How did they do the ring?
Ah, yes. The ring.
Here we are, gentlemen. The Warburton Vault. It's been in the family for more than 10 generations.
And the late Elizabeth Warburton's buried.
And has been these 13 years.
How many people have a key to these gates?
Only the family.
So it wouldn't be possible to go inside the vault?
I'm afraid it's out of the question.
Ah.
I'm sorry your journey's been wasted.
Oh, my dear Sexton, it's been nothing of the sort. Neither the ground nor the locks have been disturbed in a very long time. Capital.
The ring was a fake, then? A duplicate?
Evidently.
That must have involved a lot of work. Discovering the style, having it made, making sure it looked old and worn.
Our friends are thorough. I think we've arrived. Time for us to divide our forces.
If you come to see my son, Mr. Holmes, you should have sent word first. It would have saved you a journey.
The lieutenant is not here, Colonel.
He's at a regimental dinner in London.
Well, perhaps you'd be interested to hear of my progress.
I would not. What my son chooses to do is his affair. I'll have no part in it. Since I know that the Besmers are genuine, why should I be interested in your futile attempts to prove otherwise?
Why, indeed. Good day to you, Colonel.
Mr. Holmes.
Colonel?
Some truths are the better for not being dragged into the cold light of day. I ask you to remember that.
Colonel. What did you see on your walk around the gardens? Describe the house.
Well, only the central part is occupied. The rest seemed to be empty. Wasn't in too good a state, actually.
Any signs of repair work?
No, none at all. Not recently. What about indoors?
The same. Fascinating, don't you think? The servants were interesting, too.
Oh, you spoke to them?
I counted them. Tell Mrs. Hudson you'll be dining alone tonight. I have work to do. Watson.
Oh, you missed an excellent dinner.
Look at this.
Oh, what is it?
A copy of the Colonel's will. His first will before the recent changes in favour of the Besmers.
How did you get hold of this?
Well, it was simple enough to find out the name of the Colonel's solicitor. I went round to his office where
At this time of night? Holmes?
Where I discovered him working late. He was delighted to see me, happy to reminisce about the time I saved one of his clients from the gallows, and only too pleased to do me a small favour in return.
Oh, sorry.
You know, you can be far too suspicious sometimes. I didn't need these at all.
No.
Now, read there.
Let me see. Well, it's unusual, but is it significant?
I think it's extremely significant.
You do? Why?
Get your hat. I'll explain on the way. Good evening, Lieutenant Warburton. My apologies for interrupting your dinner.
Oh, good Lord, man, never mind that. What have you found out?
I believe I can prove to the Colonel that he's being deceived.
You believe? Is your proof good enough to convince him or not?
That's hard to say. His conviction is very deep-seated. It's based on something far stronger than simply the facts.
But then that's exactly what you're counting on, isn't it?
What?
You don't want me to disabuse your father. You never wanted it. That's not why you engaged me.
What are you talking about?
You had to be seen to be taking action.
How would it have looked to the regiment if you just stood by and let your father give away his entire estate?
Are you making some sort of accusation?
It would have looked suspicious in the extreme. And so you came to me and engaged me to uncover the very fraud that you yourself were perpetrating.
Oh, this is outrageous.
The Colonel's house was the vital clue.
The house? What about the house?
Your father's will. His old will was quite specific. You were to
How the devil do you know what was in my father's will?
Knowing things is my business. You were to inherit the house and the land on condition that you never sell them.
Of course I wouldn't sell them. That house has been in our family for generations.
And now it's all but derelict. It would take a fortune to restore it, leaving you with nothing. You could say goodbye to your high life.
You're saying I cooked up this whole business just to get rid of the house?
You fed private information to the Besmers. You supplied the duplicate wedding ring. You did everything in your power to make the seances convincing.
I've never set eyes on the Besmers.
What was your arrangement with them? What was your cut going to be when they sold the estate? What price did you put on betraying your father?
By God, sir! All right, that's enough. I've listened to you, now you can listen to me. There's not one single shred of truth in anything you've said. The thought that I would do that to my father. I have more cause to be grateful to my father than you can ever know. If you don't believe me, then let's go now. Right now to these Besmers and see if they'll recognize me. And while we're there, I'll beat the truth out of them. Oh, I should have done that from the start. Well, are we going?
No. It isn't necessary. Lieutenant, you have my profound apologies.
What the devil was that all about?
I was wrong.
Well, I realise that much. But what's changed your mind?
Weren't you listening to him?
Well, of course I was. Oh, but you must have heard more than I did. What was it?
It's not important. The question now is, what do we do next?
Do we have to start all over again?
Of course not. I've solved the case.
You have?
Well, to be strictly accurate, Lieutenant Warburton solved it for me. But what now? Watson.
Oh, I know that tone. You need my help, but you're not sure if I'll go along with it.
Am I really that transparent?
Only to me. What is it? Another burglary?
I'm afraid it's something rather more upsetting.
You want me to go to another one of those damned seances?
That's part of it.
Part of it. Are you sure this time?
Quite sure.
You can definitely put a stop to the Besmers?
Yes, I can.
Right. What do you need me to do?
Are you comfortable, my dear?
Mm-mm.
Excellent. Now, if we could take our seats.
Yes. This is very good of you, Mr. Besmer.
The Colonel is one of our greatest champions. Any friend of his...
The other night, when Mary came through, it was just overwhelming.
Same for me first time.
But with all those others there, strangers... I mean, I just couldn't... You understand?
Oh, there's no need to explain, Doctor. It's an intensely personal experience. We understand completely.
No, it's really very good of you.
You're quite sure you want me here, Watson? I'd be perfectly happy to go, wait outside or whatever.
Oh, no, Colonel, no. You're used to all this. I'm not. I'd be grateful if you stay.
Now, gentlemen, you have the ropes securely.
Perfectly.
Doctor?
Yes.
And you're quite satisfied with the restraints?
I'd have been perfectly content to forego all this, Mr. Besmer.
No. That would never do. You must be sure that whatever happens, my wife is not directly responsible. Now, if you're both ready...
Ready.
Ready.
Excellent. Then I'll turn out the lamp. And if we link our free hands, then the circle is complete. Free your minds, open your hearts, and the spirits will come. They will come.
John. John. Are you there?
Answer her, Doctor.
Call her to you.
John.
Mary?
Oh, John. It's so good to talk to you. I've missed you so much.
Oh, Mary. Is it really you?
Oh, it is. Oh, my dearest love.
It seems so fantastic.
Always believe, John. It's your belief that makes it possible. You do believe.
I want to. I want to so much.
I can help you believe.
How?
The power is strong tonight. Your faith can make it stronger.
What's going to happen?
Don't question it, Watson. Just do as she asks.
All right. I will.
Compose your mind. Empty your heart of all doubt and pain. Call to her.
Mary. Mary.
What happened?
Someone touched my shoulder. I felt it.
Don't break the circle. Can you still feel our hands?
Yes. Oh, my God. It happened again.
She's trying to materialize. Are you still holding the rope?
Yes.
Yes.
And again.
John, stay calm. Believe. Believe.
I believe.
Release your hands, my love. Come to me.
Where?
Beside you. Here. Can you feel my touch?
Yes. Yes.
Then hold me. Hold me as you used to.
Yes.
Now kiss me, John. Kiss me, my love.
I don't think so, thank you.
Now, what's going on?
Everyone stay calm.
Let me free.
Including you, please, madam.
You're breaking my arm.
No, I'm not, but you'll break it yourself if you don't stop struggling.
All right. All right.
That's better. I've got her, Holmes.
You underestimate yourself, Doctor.
Oh,
What you've got is all three of them. That's better. Magnesium flares have their uses, but they're hard on the eyes. You're trespassing. You broke in like a common thief.
I'll be sure to mention it to the police when they arrive.
Well,
Quite a haul. 2 confidence tricksters and their accomplice.
If this is your idea of a joke, sir...
There's no point in pretending, Colonel. I know too much.
So, this whole evening was just a charade.
Colonel, I'm sorry. It was the only way.
You've made a big mistake, the pair of you. You're finished, Warburton. Now it'll all come out, your sordid little secret.
We'll ruin you and your worthless son. I don't think so.
No!
Give me the gun, Colonel.
Keep your distance, Holmes.
Colonel.
You too, Doctor. And you can spare me the pitying look. They were vermin. If you know everything, you know that.
I never said I knew everything.
Then be good enough to tell me exactly what you do know.
I know that the Besmers were no more in touch with the next world than I am. And I know how they made your messages and your ring so impressively accurate. Their knowledge came from an impeccable source. You.
Go on.
We also suspect that you've been feeding the Besmers information on your various friends before you persuaded them to come to the seances.
And that you gave a helping hand in the dark by releasing your control on the medium. Are we right?
Quite right. And do you know why?
Because the Besmers were blackmailing you.
I never realized what a relief it would be to have it known. I almost feel I should thank you.
Somehow they discovered the secret you've worked for so long to keep hidden. The secret you've spent a fortune to conceal.
You really do know everything, then?
No. We know that this secret concerns your son. Beyond that, we know nothing.
My son... It was a foolish indiscretion many years ago. He's repented it ever since.
And you've successfully kept it from the eyes and the ears of the world.
Not just the world, Mr. Holmes. The regiment. Michael has a glorious career in front of him. If the news had become known, he would have been finished. And the regiment itself, it would have been tainted.
And the Besmers threatened you with exactly that.
In return for their silence, I had to go along with their preposterous lies. I had to convince friends, valued friends, of the wonder of it all. And, to my lasting shame, I had to profane the memory of my wife for the sake of their play acting.
Eventually, you ran out of friends to introduce. The Besmers saw your usefulness coming to an end.
And they demanded my very home, a final payment.
And you gave it, at the cost of your own reputation.
What was that to me? Do you have a son, Mr. Holmes?
No.
Oh. Well, perhaps if you had, you would understand. Look at this scene. Not exactly the glory of the battlefield. Eh, Watson?
No, Colonel.
No. Damaging to the regiment.
I'm afraid so.
Unless, of course, it was the work of a lunatic.
Colonel?
Someone not responsible for his actions. Then the only blame would be on him. Don't you agree?
Colonel, we know perfectly well that you're in your right mind.
I take the liberty of disagreeing with you, sir. And I venture that this will prove me correct. For the Berkshires and for my son!
Was it difficult?
What?
Convincing the police that the Colonel was insane.
Scotland Yard brain runs on predictable tracks. No gentleman in his right mind would kill twice and then put a pistol to his own head in front of witnesses. Therefore, he was not in his right mind, exactly as your Colonel intended.
Do you suppose he planned to shoot them anyway, even if we hadn't exposed the whole thing?
Why else would he have taken the gun? They'd driven him to his limit.
Will it have to come out? The blackmail, the family secret?
I don't see why it should.
Thank you.
Some truths are the better for not being dragged into the cold light of day.
Who said that?
A good man of my acquaintance.
Will you tell me something?
What?
Well, two things, actually. How did she get out of those ropes and chains?
It's a question of accumulated slack.
Accumulated slack?
The longer the rope, the easier to slip it off. The chain's the same. Actually, the hardest thing is stopping it falling off before you're ready.
You almost sound as though you're speaking from experience.
What's the second thing?
What was it Michael Warburton said that put you onto the solution?
Oh, that. I have more cause to be grateful to my father than you can ever know.
And that gave you the whole story?
Well, let's say it put all the other pieces into place. Well, I'd considered that the Colonel might have been cooperating with the Besmers, but I dismissed it. Why should he? It never occurred to me that he might have been protecting his son.
Until that moment?
Exactly.
Then it's a good thing that you did provoke him. I doubt he'd have said it otherwise.
It's true enough. Will you tell me something?
Of course, if I can.
Do you understand?
I'm sorry?
Perhaps if you had a son, you would understand. Do you?
Don't you?
Not yet. Good night, Watson.
Good night.
In The Madness of Colonel Warburton, Sherlock Holmes was played by Clive Merrison and Dr. John Watson by Andrew Sachs. Colonel Warburton was played by Timothy West, Mrs. Besmer by Eleanor Bron, Mr. Besmer by Struan Roger, Michael Warburton by Jamie Newell, Sir Robert by David Bannerman, and Mrs. Fryer by Claire Corbett. Other parts were played by members of the cast. The violinist was Leonard Friedman. The Madness of Colonel Warburton was written by Bert Coules, from a reference in the short story The Engineer's Thumb by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The director was Patrick Rayner.